My mic is muted. I apologize for that. But anyway, welcome to another DCU Daily, guys. Here we are. We are here at the precipice of greatness because, as you could probably maybe tell from the title, I don't know if Dan changed it or not, but the Supergirl trailer is coming tomorrow. So obviously we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be preparing for DCU Daily. But of course, that is going to be a while because we have other things to talk about. For instance, what else? What other things can there possibly be to talk about? Well, of course, we are going to be talking about MCU Weekly. Obviously, DC isn't the only thing we like to talk about. We like to talk about all the nerdy things. So, we're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man. We're going to talk about Avengers, Deadpool and Wolverine, Black Panther. So we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. We talk about 28 years later, what people are saying about the Bone Temple, because the first reactions have been released, in addition to the development of 28 Years Later 3, if it's going to actually be happening or not. So we'll see about that. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about some Hunger Games stuff. Two very big people are going to be coming back to the franchise. Very surprising, but it's going to be happening. And then, of course, we have our quick hits. And then we have DCU Daily. Of course, not just Supergirl stuff, but we are going to be talking about a couple more little tidbits here and there about DC. And then I'll be heading out, and Dan will be taking over for Warner Brothers merger stuff. Again, that's not my thing. I hate it all. I hate talking about it. So that's going to be Dan's thing. But until then, let us get started on this wonderful show that we have. Be enough and get ready for a whole bunch of fun, intrigue, mystery. Let's see and find out.
It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I'm always the number two.
All right, mister, I need to paint my abs on to get nominated. You don't see Robert Downey doing that.
You're kidding.
Robert
You're
Downey.
kidding. I can't open the envelope without the...
Warner Brothers is heading back into the Matrix with a new movie in the works.
Wonder what other surprises are in store.
I want to be Bruce Wayne.
I like that. You're gonna love me.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see chorus.
Right there.
You look ridiculous.
We're not no more here.
Dude, I can barely understand you. Your accent's insane.
Give me a hand up. Nope, I'm actually okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. Wow.
Welcome to the show. I am, of course, your host, John. Lovely to see you all. We are going to get started, but first, I got to welcome some people to the chat. Caleb is in the chat. Honka Caleb, of course, enterprising. Tony, missed you yesterday. Nice to see you. Ron, you are indeed first. But enterprising Ron, Tony, Acres of Movies, Caleb, all lovely to see. And Steven Ortega now in the chat. But here we are. But Tony's ready to fiend that profile picture. He's ready to fucking take on the world with that one. In a ritualistic sense, I guess, but not in a emotional or morale, sense. Wow, going to bed at 11 p.m. That must be nice. That must be real nice. Really nice. Yeah. Anyway, let's start off. Unfortunately, we have to start off with some rather dour news. We got this a little bit earlier today, and it's still worthy enough to talk about. But unfortunately, Jeff Garcia, who voiced Sheen on Jimmy Neutron, has unfortunately passed away at the age of 50. He was admitted into the hospital a couple months back, I think because he had complications with pneumonia, and then he had an aneurysm, and then he had, I think, a couple strokes, and he was on life support for a while until they took him off, and now he has passed on. So for many people, including myself, grew up with Jimmy Neutron, grew up with this ridiculous character. Jeff Garcia always did a wonderful, wonderful job in the show, and I'm sure he has a gigantic filmography to showcase other, other great things. In regards to this. He was mainly a stand-up comedian, but he also did Barnyard and Happy Feet, the Happy Feet movies, the Rio movies. So, he's done a couple things, but but I think it was specifically okay. So this one's saying it's he complications from a collapsed lung. So I've been getting a lot of different things about Jeff Garcia. I heard like this article was like, oh, it was an aneurysm, was this that. So I don't know like what exactly specific because there's a lot of different outlets reporting on this. Um so yeah, it's very sad to see, and it's a shame that he passed away so young, and he, passed away from complications for a lot of things. So, may he rest in peace. I never watched any of his stand up. It was mainly Barnyard, Back to the Barnyard, Jimmy Neutron. Those were the main things that I watched him from. So, rest in peace, Mr. Garcia. You brought a lot of kids a lot of joy with your crazy antics with the boy genius Jimmy Neutron, and of course, other such shows as well. But let's move on to some other brighter things in regards to, although speaking of talking animals, Zootopia 2 looks to cage up at number one again before Avatar Fire and Ash lights up the box office. So in its next week, which will probably this next weekend, we are probably going to be getting um I'm sure that's what it was. There was probably a number of different things that led to what happened. So, but in terms of like a clear answer, I got a couple of different things. But Zootopia 2, it looks like it's going to overtake Five Nights at Freddy's this upcoming weekend. Because it's still killing globally mainly. Domestically, it's doing pretty good. Like it's last time I checked, it was like 180. Might be higher. I assume it's higher by that point. But yeah, okay. It's at 227 domestically. It is internationally at 727. Lots of sevens, lots of twos. It is now currently, although I'm sure this is from Box Office Mojo, so this is probably not the most up to date, but it is around the $954 million mark. So by the end of next weekend, this upcoming weekend, it's definitely going to be hitting that Billy. Going to be hitting that Billy, and just because even though they did a good job with its, I think like 107 million that we talked about yesterday, Zootopia 2 it's Disney, so obviously they're going to kill it, and Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror a horror franchise. So even though horror franchises can do very well, um, it there's that as well. But congrats. But of course, that's gonna be the last until Fire and Ash absolutely kills it next weekend. Um, but the family animated movie is expected to pop back up to number one with around $26 million, a negative 40% dip from its 43.4 the second weekend, mainly because of FNAF, which is honestly pretty good. 40, anything below 50 is really good, even if it's for a third weekend. So it's, as it says here, it's going to hit the $1 billion dollar mark worldwide, sans Russia for some reason, becoming the third movie to do so. Second MPA title to pull it off after Lilo and Stitch's 1 billion. So Five Nights at Freddy's is gonna swing between 16 to 20 million. Though purely theatrical, the movie's fandom is front loaded, hence the drops. Still, the movie, which stands at 71 million through yesterday, is destined for 100 million domestically. The first movie ended its US Canada run at 137.2 million. And then, of course, you have other smaller films like Ella McKay, Silent Night, Deadly Night, the re-release of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And I forget what the projections, I believe the projections for Fire and Ash last time we checked was around 100 to 110 million, which isn't like great, but the thing is, in terms of Avatar, it was always about the sustainability. It wasn't like FNAF, where it's like it front loads the opening weekend and then it like drops off majorly. Avatar, from what I remember from, I mean, I more so remember Way of Water because it's more recent. I remember like it had a very good open. It was below projections, but it still had a very good opening weekend. But the thing is, it's more about the sustainability. People kept going, like second, third, fourth, fifth weekends. It still kept going. It's still making those high numbers, and that's how, Way of Water and the first film made its money, is that people kept going back and back and over again. While I like to say Zootopia isn't that, but it seems like Zootopia is going to have like really good 3 to 4 weekends, and then it's going to kind of drop off from there. It's going to get its Billy and then just run home. So I think it's going to make 1.5 to 1.8. I think that was my projection for Zootopia 2. So there is that as well. But yeah, congrats to Zootopia 2, FNAF, and soon to be Avatar Fire and Ash. It's already nominated for cinematic and box office achievement, despite the fact that it's not even in the box office right now. So that's definitely an intriguing theory. I don't think it's going to beat it. I think I said Avatar is going to be 1.5 to 1.8, and then Zootopia 2 is like going to barely get to billion, maybe like 1.2 billion. It's going to make less than 1.5, I think, but it's still going to get a billion. Oh yeah, it's going to be a packed show tomorrow. Very much a packed show tomorrow. That has to be a record. Yeah, I would assume so. But the thing is, since Avatar is still technically under Fox, yes, it's both are owned by Disney, but it's not like a Disney movie, it's not really a Disney movie. It's a Fox movie that is under Disney. I don't know if that's technicalities or what. Game Awards and Supergirl tomorrow, and then there's also stuff allegedly with Avengers Doomsday. Obviously, we'll get to that soon, because speaking of, we are going to be now getting into MCU Weekly. We have a couple things for MCU Weekly, and apparently, according to this, that Disney Plus calls it quits, quote unquote, with the MCU's best TV franchise. It's calling it quits on Daredevil? No. It's calling it quits on the WandaVision franchise. Yeah. The one that was loved until the last episode, which is now hated. And then Agatha All Along, which was a wounding surprise, not surprising at all, meh. But apparently, it's pretty much been known that Vision Quest is going to be the final part, quote unquote, in this trilogy of these characters, of this trifecta of characters of Wanda, Agatha, and Vision. I apologize. I apologize for the yawning, guys. Oh, so tired. Anyway, but yeah. What are your thoughts on James Gunn's movie not receive votes for the goal? We talked about this yesterday. It was very, very unlikely that there was no chance in hell that Superman was gonna get any Golden Globe nominations, because Golden Globe nominations, they don't have awards for the technical things that superhero movies get nominated for, like sound, cinematography, effects, makeup and hairstyling, stuff like that is the stuff that superhero movies get nominated for. And with that, Superman wasn't good. And the thing is, Golden Globe focuses on movies, miniseries, and TV. Yeah. And because the Golden Globes is like a broader sense of like TV and movies. Oscars is just movies. So there's 26 categories now, or soon to be 26 categories, because they're adding best casting director or best casting, whatever it is, for this year. And then next year, they're going to finally add stunts after like so fucking long. Yeah, I mean, it's lucky that they actually win anything. So, we'll try to do that tomorrow. But yeah, so to the shock of no one, the WandaVision trilogy is going to end with Vision Quest, and I can't imagine people would be shocked about that. but here we are. So next up, and more important things, is Amazing Spider-Man. And yeah, this Amazing Spider-Man. But apparently, Josh Hutcherson was talking about not getting the role of Spider-Man. You could check, by the way, you could check out Josh Hutcherson's screen test. I believe it's on YouTube, like publicly. I'm sure you could just look up Josh Hutcherson Spider-Man screen test. And I remember seeing that. Yeah, you could see that, and his audition, and it was really good. Like if Andrew Garfield didn't get the role, I could definitely see Josh. I think Josh Hutcherson was definitely, like, at that time would have been the most perfect choice. But at the same time, he wouldn't have gotten Hunger Games, which he talks about here. But he was saying, a few months before I got cast in Hunger Games, I was in the running to be Spider-Man. He said on the Dinner on Me's podcast, I got told no, which as a teenager, which is ironic as Andrew Garfield was not one, was heartbreaking because I obviously wanted to be Spider-Man. But then I was cast in the Hunger Games. That was the craziest turn of events. Hunger Games came out of nowhere. It just changed everything. I didn't learn rejection ever. I knew only success from age 9 to like 24, then kind of post Hunger Games world. Because Hunger Games set things up. The industry is so goddamn tricky because they get you up in this way where they're like, you've arrived. You are now working with Jennifer Lawrence and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And you're in this movie that makes billions of dollars. You're the second lead of the film. Quickly, as they're excited to get you into the spotlight, it was just like a string of no one calling, not getting any offers, auditioning, but not getting cast. It's this whole thing of, oh, wow, I have my career that I've had since I was 9 years old. It's always worked. I always got cast. Of course, there are things you don't get cast in, but I had only known that the chances are if I was auditioning, was going to book it. That is just not the reality at all. So it just him reflecting on what could have been. Honestly, he would have been an amazing Spider-Man. Um, you know, I think he would have definitely killed it. It's a shame he got told no, but I think he would have been more of like the nerdy Peter. I think he would have been too much like what Toby did with the character, where he would have been a better Peter Parker than a better Spider-Man. And I feel like they were kind of going for more of like the modernization of the character of like like Andrew Garfield's the best Spider-Man. Like he's the best at playing that character. He's an okay Peter, but he is the best like as Spider-Man. He reflects the character the best. And I feel like they saw that in Josh Hutcherson. They were like, yeah, this is more of like the nerd. He more so nails the nerdy Peter Parker vibe. And we already did that with Tobey Maguire. Let's do something different. And we're gonna go for more of the modernization of Spidey. But no, I think they get to talk about it now. Like there's like no NDAs. It's superheroes are still kind of big, so they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna talk about this time I couldn't get it." Like I remember Zachary Levi talking about how he didn't get Star-Lord when he was doing Shazam. So there was that as well. But yeah. I think Josh Hutcherson would have been amazing. Go check out his audition tape. It was really good. So next up, we have rumor mills, and the Avengers will face some incredibly powerful villains post Secret Wars. As possible spoilers, but this is coming from Cosmic Circus, so take it with a gigantic, and I mean gigantic, grain of salt. Celestials are a big antagonist, Mephisto as well, but he's being saved up for Midnight Suns. I also heard about the Masters of Evil being done at one point with both Zemo and the Leader as members. So this I feel like is wish fulfillment because it's like, oh, we're including Celestials, which was, the whole thing with Ego the Living Planet. And it kind of brings in the Eternals a bit, which they kind of want to steer away from. Then you have Mephisto. Okay, fine. He's finally showed up. He played by Sacha Baron Cohen, but I don't think he would want to like appear in many projects because it's Sacha Baron Cohen, but he's not doing anything, so I don't know. But I could definitely. There was rumors that a Midnight Suns movie was going to happen, and that's what they're essentially doing with Blade, or they're essentially canceling that movie and just shoving him in Midnight Suns. And then Masters of Evil has been kind of beaten around the bush a little bit in terms of the franchise. I could see that happening, and especially with Zemo and Leader. Guardians of the Galaxy is when the Celestial stuff dropped. So obviously, I don't believe any of this. Some of it makes sense, some of it not. Some of it seems like wish fulfillment. Like, I can't see Masters of Evil. I can't really see Celestials. I can only see Mephistos and Midnight Suns because Mephisto is in the MCU 100%, and maybe Sacha Baron Cohen wants to come back, and maybe he's contractually obligated. Then you have Midnight Suns. That's kind of been talked about a little bit. There was rumors that like that was going to be the movie that leads. Midnight Suns leads into that Blade was going to lean into that, have him be part of the team, and plus a lot of characters have been introduced that are part of the minute, like Doctor Strange, Blade, Ghost Rider, if they go with the Robbie Reyes version, because that's in the MCU already. Maybe Moon Knight. Moon Knight would be a good one. Just kind of throw all the magic characters kind of on this team, and I think that would work. It would be a good way to bring in Johnny Blaze because him and Mephisto have a lot of history together. So yeah. I think Midnight Suns makes the most sense, but I don't see any of this really being true. Then speaking of things that should just die, Deadpool movie star Hugh Jackman hints at MCU return ahead of Avengers Doomsday release. He had this to say: "It doesn't feel like the end." He confirmed an interview with Wicked star Cynthia Erivo for the Variety and CNN Actors on Actors series. It really felt like the end after Logan. Actually, I needed to claim it as the end because I really believed in some things that I wanted that movie to be, and I had to fight for them. I had to say, this is the last time I'm doing it. Then I saw Deadpool. I was like, oh, I see. 48 hours. I see Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, but I would shove it down. I've told everyone that I'm done. I'm not one of those guys. And I went, you know what? I changed my mind. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not even going to say I'm sorry. And it was so awesome. And then he kind of goes talking about like his role as Wolverine. And it's like, yeah, it's just like, I mean, if he wants to do it, cool. It just makes Logan less impactful because even though that's probably going to remain the best Marvel movie of all time, like from any company, it does still kind of taint that because the whole point of that movie was not just like, oh, we're going to kill off Wolverine, which it does taint with having all these like multiversal aspects, but it does taint the fact like the whole point of it was Hugh Jackman is done as Wolverine, and then that was the end. And that's kind of a shame. That's kind of sad. Like that was the thing. That makes it a slightly less impactful. Does that stop it from being a phenomenal? It's still amazing. It's James Mangold and Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and Daphne Keane, Boyd Holbrook, even Richard E. Grant's small role. What they did for that movie was nothing short of fantastic. It still remains the greatest Marvel movie of all time. I don't care what anybody says. That is the best Marvel movie. Days of Future Past, also excellent. X2, also excellent. We're talking about the best. Then, Spider-Man 2, excellent. So, all of these are the best of the best. Winter Soldier, one of the best. Then, any other ones I'm probably forgetting, but like mainly the Fox movies. Pretty much like I would say Days of Future Past. I have not seen the Road Cut. I've heard it's really good. But Days of Future Past, like that movie alone is better than the entirety of the MCU. It's like not even close. It's not even close. But the Wolverine, very underrated. So if we're gonna go through all of them, I'm gonna say the first X-Men, very good, flawed. X2, one of the greatest fucking comic book movies of all time. X-Men: The Last Stand, it has its problems, and you could tell it's two scripts shoved into one movie. But what it did do, I think, like the Cure stuff was better because Phoenix, whole Phoenix shit was like done terribly and makes no sense and was just done because that's what they teased at the end of the last movie. So, there's that. What came after that? Oh God, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Yeah, that wasn't good. Then you had First Class, great. Days of Future Past, great. Well, First Class, then The Wolverine, amazing. Then Days of Future Past, amazing. Then you had Logan and Deadpool, and Logan was phenomenal. Deadpool's fun. Deadpool 2 is really good. And then Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, and New Mutants I never watched. And Legion and The Gifted as TV shows were excellent. But yeah, I've said to do a tier list for so damn long, but none of y'all fucking vote on it. So maybe we'll try to bring it back. We'll try to bring it back, and maybe you motherfuckers will actually vote on it, because I would love to do an X-Men tier list. That would be amazing. Anyway, next up, Black Panther 3. Expected to release in 2028. Ryan Coogler says Wakanda Forever felt unfinishable at times. So, he was talking about, his, the whole thing with the Walk of Fame with Chadwick Boseman. He said, I didn't think I would last in this industry. Looking at it pretty fatalistically, then Chad died, so I was questioning everything. There are points in that movie where it felt unfinishable. So when we put it out and I was happy with the film, I felt like, okay, I could do this for the rest of my life. To be honest with you, yes, the image I get is a green meadow with Bay Area fog on it, and it's dawn. That's what I see after that movie, because it feels like an open land, open opportunity. It sounds like an awful lot like Black Panther 3 will be Coogler's MCU send-off, though he did say that I'm so fired up about that movie. So, it seems like it's going to be coming soon. It's not confirming it's going to 100% be 2028, but it's most likely going to be around that time. I've heard Wakanda Forever did do a good job as a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, and I hope that he continues to do great work with Black Panther 3, whenever that is actually coming out. But that is it for MCU Weekly. We're going to go back to the regular news, your regularly scheduled programming. And then, of course, we have the next bit of news, which is about 28 years later, the Bone Temple. Let me get that. First reactions have dropped. It's going to be coming in about a month. January 16th is when it is coming out. And the reactions seem to be pretty positive. While official critic reviews for Bone Temple are embargoed until close to the film's January 16th release date, Columbia Pictures allowed press in the US and UK to release social media reactions to press screenings on Tuesday night. From our trailer released last week, the action in Bone Temple picks up the action after the events 20 years later, focusing on the human survivors of the Rage virus in the northeast of England. Bone Temple seems to focus on the dual narratives of Dr. Ian Kelson seeking a cure for the virus and Spike becoming part of Sir Jimmy Crystal's murderous gang. So Nia DaCosta is taking Boyle, who wants to come back for part 3. But Dimitri Krauss said The Bone Temple is brilliant, a sequel that operates on a much weirder wavelength than its predecessor, tackling the idea of a false god in a surprisingly thorny manner. While not as formally inventive, I found its focused narrative to be stronger and more emotionally acute. The Bone Temple is a brutally audacious follow-up to 20 years later that largely sidelines the infected to explore cultism, trauma, psychosis, and compassion. I really like its uncompromising idiosyncratic ambition. It's easily more polarizing than 28 years later. 20 years later, Bone Temple deepens the franchise's lore with new questions and some long-awaited answers in the quietest yet undeniably most brutal installment of the series. Ray Fiennes is truly phenomenal here, adding new poetic layers of complexity to his character. I love The Bone Temple, a brutal examination of faith, control, and fear. Then The Bone Temple is exactly how you do a middle chapter of a trilogy. 28 years later, The Bone Temple is a great follow-up to Danny Boyle's recent sequel. Nia DaCosta recaptures the magic of the previous films with a proposal story that utilizes dynamic camera work as it explores the culture side of faith, religion, and NHS, the balance between whatever the hell he's talking about. What if isolation is as erosive as the virus following through the infected veins? DaCosta's introversion of this world juxtaposes so precisely with the groundwork laid before her by Boyle. Hard to imagine a better start to the new year. yet more evidence that when you let Nia DaCosta cook, great things tend to happen. So much love with Ray Fiennes walking away with the MVP. I think I can now say 20 years later, The Bone Temple, very entertaining and worthy sequel to the first film. The film also includes some of the best bonker shit you'll find in a film next year. I want one of these films annually for as long as I live, and pretty much going on and on and on about how fucking bonkers it is, how crazy it is, how great it is. Ray Fiennes and Jack O'Connell are amazing. Pretty much everything about this movie is, you know, oh my fucking god, it's like the fucking best movie of the year, and it only comes out 3 weeks into the new year. So if you guys were excited about 20 years later, The Bone Temple, are you still excited? Do you believe these reactions? Are you, super pumped for it? Are you super not? What are your thoughts on this? If you weren't pumped, are you now pumped? Let me know in the comments below. But I hope so. You can watch my review on the channel. It's under videos. I did one for Movie Talk Madness. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be on DCU Daily that day, so I did a separate video just in case. So you guys can go check that out. It's on videos. Quick thoughts. I think 20 years later, I think like 2/3 of the movie are really boring and like mid at best. Sure, it's got some great cinematography, interesting characters and the such, but it falls flat in many areas. Meanwhile, once Ray Fiennes enters the movie, it becomes one of the greatest zombie movies I've ever seen in my life. It's like that last act is like up there with like Train to Busan and Day of the Dead as like one of the fucking greatest zombie movies I've ever seen. But unfortunately, it's preceded by mid kind of garbage for most of it. So, and that's true. Ray Fiennes boosts all movies. Like, and what I love, and I was talking about this with another person in another server I was in, but I love how what's so great about Ray Fiennes is that he doesn't feel like he's above stuff like this. Like, oh, fucking ridiculous zombie movie, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do that. I'm better than that. Ray Fiennes, not only does he habitually give some of the greatest performances in cinematic history time and time and time again, but he also feels that he can do stuff like this. Like, he still gives the same. It's not like, oh, I'll just do it for a paycheck. No, he's like, I'm going to give this 110%, just like everything else, because it is just as worthy of my talents as, Schindler's List. Like, that phenomenally amazing actor is that he gives his all to even the stuff that most people would not respect, like a zombie movie, like the Lego Batman movie, stuff like that. And he still gives just, everything into all of his performances, and he doesn't act like he's better than that, even though he has every right to act better than, I'm above this. He has every right to, because he is like, he's such an amazing talent. And so, I respect that majorly about him. He will do anything, but you know what? The thing is, he won't just do it to do it. He's going to do it because he's like, I'm going to give something to this. I'm going to give my all into this. And you know what? Good for him. And that's why Ray Fiennes is among the greatest that will ever be. I actually still have not seen The Menu. I know I wanted to see it for the longest time. It's got a great cast. I love the cast, but I just, for some reason, I just couldn't get to the theater, and I never watched it. And I know I should, but this isn't the only 20 years later news. Apparently, because of all this high praise, the third movie is finally getting the go ahead, because Danny Boyle was talking about this for a while, where he was saying like, oh, we were having trouble getting finance. It hasn't officially gotten the green light, even though I plan to do a trilogy. This is my plan. But it's like, oh, we're having trouble. But now it's official. 28 years later, 3, aka the 5th movie in the franchise, it is without a doubt going to be happening. And it's, well, not without a doubt going to be happening, but it is like Sony is actually greenlighting it. It's moving forward, and Cillian Murphy is in talks, but it's already said he's going to appear at the end of the second movie. So it seems like, yeah, Cillian Murphy is going to be returning. Alex Garland is still writing the project, and it seems like Danny Boyle is going to be coming back for the third film after taking a break with the second, with Nia DaCosta taking over. Also, hello, movie spud. Nice to see. So what now? 28 decades later? No, it's still going to be 20, because it's one of those things where like 20 years later, it's just gonna be one big story of 3 volumes essentially, like 28 weeks, 28 days, 28 weeks, and then 28 years later, 1, 2, 3. It's just going to be 28 years later. So, that's great to see. But I hope it's great. I hope the second movie's great. I'm excited for it. I'm really, really excited. What? Oh, damn. Okay. Your great grandchildren could watch 28 Centuries Later. Honestly, that would be a very interesting movie. But yeah, this is definitely very exciting because I know Danny Boyle was talking about this for a while. He was like, "Oh God, I hate how this isn't gonna blah blah blah." So yeah, it's awesome to see. Um, and yeah, so not really much to say about this, but 20 years later, 3 is going to be happening. Hopefully it stays the course and we will actually get the film. Um, they tried to get 28 months later off the ground for a while, but after 28 weeks later, kind of failed at the box office, and not a lot of people like that one, even though it's the best movie by far. Um, it um it just never got there, and then eventually it just became so long that like 28 months wouldn't have worked. So they eventually, I don't know how Danny Boyle and Alex Garland managed to get funding and like penning stuff now, but they eventually got it. And so like, it's been too long. Let's just skip months and go to 28 years later. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, as I said, they tried to get 28 months off the ground, but it was never meant to be. So, but yeah, really exciting for 28 years later, 3, whatever the hell it's going to be called. Then finally, we were talking about Josh Hutcherson being in the Amazing Spider-Man, but we have more Josh Hutcherson news. Apparently, he and Jennifer Lawrence are going to be returning for Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. So, if you don't know what this is about, Hunger Games is getting a new adaptation with Suzanne Collins' next book. It also got a trailer. It's going to be about the 50th anniversary of the 50th Hunger Games, and it's the second quarter quell. This time it doubles the amount of tributes, and Haymitch, this is the one that Haymitch won. And so with her 12, it seems as though, and speaking of Ray Fiennes too, wow, that would have been a better segue. But Ray Fiennes, who is playing President Snow in this film as well, you know, it's that's very exciting. But it had this to say, Lawrence will reprise her role as Katniss Everdeen, while Hutcherson is set to return as PETA, with the pair likely appearing in a flash forward. No details have been disclosed, so we don't know what we don't know what this is going to be. It's most likely it's just going to be, a flash forward. It's going to show hey, I don't know if anybody here has read the book. I don't know if there is a flash forward, but they probably want to include them in there because, they're popular and people want to see them again. So, yeah. Yeah. But this is awesome to see. If people were excited to see them, then boom, there you go. Awesome. Great. Wonderful. Not really much to say about that, but I'm excited for Sunrise on the Reaping. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was surprisingly phenomenal. So arguably that's probably the best Hunger Games movie next to Catching Fire, so like good on them for that. But I mean, that would still be amazing. But yeah, awesome Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm excited for this movie. Excited to see them. How that will equate to the narrative, we'll just have to wait and see. But of course, that is it for the main news portion. Now we're gonna get into something a little quicker, guys. Dan's quick. He's a quick shot. So we gotta talk about Dan. Dan, how you doing today? You're muted.
Hello. Yes. Sorry. I wasn't feeling very good today, so I had like a really upset stomach. So, hello Ron. Hello Enterprising. Hello Tony. Caleb. Anybody else who Movie Spud. I think Swag Fan was here earlier. So everybody who's watching. Dark Lead Eric. So yeah, everybody in the chat. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks, John, for keeping the boat afloat, as it were. Yeah.
With all this, Dan, we got to announce quick hits. So
yes. Let's get into the quick hits, shall we?
Yeah. And
the fun part of the news
like
where
you're gonna be in the next Blade Runner movie with the pink hue, the pink purple hue. You look like you're gonna be with Ryan Gosling.
Oh, is that what's going on? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you look a little bit pink purple hue. A little bit.
What happened there?
I showed the opening. Anyway, let's get into the quick hits. And the first thing I really don't want to talk about, so let's make this real quick. Avatar.
Just like, by the way, it's quick thing. Liz will be back on the show soon. She was just busy, like literally busy.
Busy.
With,
she recently had surgery. Life, so. She's okay, but it's been a rough couple of weeks. So
right.
we're gonna get her back on the show hopefully.
Yeah. Brother Love. What are you talking about? Okay. Anyway, no, I'm losing track of what you guys are. Anyway, let's keep on going.
Avatar: Last Airbender season 2 gets debut trailer and first look photos. It's gonna hit Netflix in 2026, and it's gonna be about the Earth Kingdom. It's gonna be about him training for, being an Earthbender, even though he barely trained being a Waterbender in season 1, so, in terms of the live action show. But Dan, do you watch this? Are you excited for this, or do you care?
I saw the trailer actually. I watched the trailer, and I haven't seen the first season, so I just remember like the hype around the show, and I remember it broke records when it came out, but it just sort of got forgotten, as a lot of Netflix stuff does, because it just drops on one day, people watch it, binge it, it's a big deal, then it's gone. So although I get that Devs have a bit of a mixed reaction to this in terms of just this doesn't feel as definitive as maybe people wanted it to be as a live action adaptation, and the original creators of the animated show were on this project, and then they went back to Paramount, and now they're working on the animated movies. So there's like a whole nother iteration of the animated movies with Aang coming out soon. So we'll see. I mean, it looks promising. It's gonna release probably similar to what they did with season 1. They've added a couple of new characters from the original show, so we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Movie Spud saying Tearless Tuesday was a fun show. Thank you. You enjoyed the show. Agreeing with John on TCM and the importance of film preservation. I agree with you. I think TCM is really underrated today, and what Warner Brothers Discovery did to kind of gut it, literally firing most of the people who work for TCM, was really sad. I hope Paramount or Netflix restore some of that luster to TCM. So yeah, just there's a lot of movies that TCM has that people just otherwise would never be aware of today. Unless you went to film school and a good one that showed you all those movies. And anyway, but let's keep on going.
Yes, of course. But let's move on, because I know a lot of people are not happy with this show. I know even my friend who
he does look a lot older.
One,
yeah,
said,
by the way,
did say he said like the movie is better than the show. He's like, damn, wow, it's so bad that.
I will say, watching the trailer, I got that impression, like the effects, like the water, like when they're doing their power moves with the earth, water, fire, and all that. It kind of looks similar to the way they approached it. Like here, they say the word grounded in this article as a subheader. That's pretty much, I think, the look of the show that they've been going for. Because and I don't know if that's really maximizing the potential of the franchise, because Avatar, like, you know, in animation, is kind of like Lion King. The animation allows them to really be expressive, and then so if you make it grounded, it doesn't quite come across as well. I think it's the same school of thought as people want Superman to be very bright and colorful, rather than what we got in Man of Steel, because that's how it is in the comics. And I think this Avatar show is sort of more on the grounded side. The effects look a little cheap in some areas. We didn't get a ton of them. They look clean. They look cheap in the sense that they don't look like, you know, oh, grand, like big. It doesn't feel larger than life the way that the animated shows do. It feels closer to the M. Night movie in that sense. But again, I have a very small sample size. I haven't seen the show, so for all I know, the actual show itself has fantastic effects. Netflix certainly put a lot of money into it, so we'll see.
Yep. But Sinners director Ryan Coogler says rejecting Academy invite was not out of animosity after Oscar snubs. I'm just not very good at judging things, which is an interesting thing to say, but it's at least he's being honest. Like, hey, it's not for anything they did. It's just like I suck at critiquing things. I'm better at making them.
No, but he also went on to say in this interview, and this is like from a New York Times interview that he did, so then, you know, the quotes were pulled out and across many other articles. But basically, he was talking about how, like, he doesn't quite relate to this process as much. He's more on like, look, he kept pointing to the idea that, look, there's a lot of people who roll up their sleeves and, you know, and do the work of making movies, you know, more blue collar workers, he said specifically, who aren't really part of the Academy. The Academy tends to feature more above the line talent, you know, actors, producers, directors, stuff, people like that. I'm not saying that's the only thing, you know, a group of people. They do have people from other parts of the business, but like a lot of the folks, you know, the production assistants and, you know, the folks that work in like the grips and the gaffers and the electricians and the guys who drive the, like, people who do the grunt work of movie that goes into movie making don't end up being represented in the Academy, even though they have thousands of people. And Ryan Coogler was like, I just identify with them more than I do with. So I guess he was implying that there's a sense of elitism to the Academy, and maybe that played a role in him snubbing it because it's also not quite his thing. I can kind of agree with that. Like, I'm always more comfortable in an informal environment than I am in like a black tie event. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are like that, and clearly Ryan Coogler is one of them. So, yeah. But it's good to see. I mean, look, he's gonna have his chance at potentially winning Best Director with Sinners, and he's you know, already been nominated multiple times for his other work, including the original Black Panther movie. So, yeah. Darkly Derek saying apparently Warner Brothers Discovery is going to accept Netflix offer next week. Netflix is not taking the networks, but I agree. TCM. Well, we'll get into that later, Eric. That's gonna be after the Supergirl talk. So stick around for that.
Yes. But yeah. Tidbit for Ryan Coogler. And then next up, the drama trailer. Zendaya and Robert Pattinson are getting married and losing their minds in A24 dark comedy. I saw the trailer for this. It looks intriguing. I did like the director's previous film Dream Scenario. I thought that was, again, it's like weird, out there, but very intriguing film. So I'm curious how this one will do. I hope it's good. I don't know if I'm like gonna see it like immediately, but like I will say it definitely shows like it feels like it's showing like the inner workings of like an actual relationship, good, the bad, the ugly kind of thing, where it's just like everything. So I'm intrigued with that, and two great actors. Love to see it. Can't wait.
Yeah, remember when we talked about this originally when they got cast and attached to this project? We were like, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. Wonder what that's about. It's eccentric. It's very. I mean, it's very much feels like a A24 movie. It looks fun. Mickey 17 is I mean, look, Robert Pattinson, you know, for every Batman he does like 5 other movies that are the opposite of a movie like the Batman. And Zendaya, of course, you know, she's kind of been diversifying her portfolio too. It looks fun. We'll see. A24, I mean, they're trying to like move up from being like this really independent to like a mid-major, sort of like Lionsgate, but they haven't had the most success at the box office of late. So maybe this could fix that. They've got 2 big stars, 2 of the biggest stars in this going right now. So we'll see. We shall see. But
next up, Johnny Depp sets first English language adaptation of Mikhail Bulgakov's classic The Master and Margarita. Very intriguing. I'd watch it trailer first, but that sounds interesting. I don't know what the hell it is, but I like it.
Yeah, this is like a classic Russian novel. Like it was published on behalf of the author posthumously back, I think, in the 60s or something. It's been tried to be adapted by if you in the article they list like some multiple like top tier names, like just A-lister directors who have tried to adapt it in the past and never really been able to do that. Gilliam, it's actually one paragraph above if you scroll back up. Some of the names that Roman Polanski, Federico Fellini, Baz Luhrmann, Terry Gilliam, but none of them have been able to quite figure it out. It's about a story in 1930s Moscow, and Johnny Depp had some success with Jean Dubarry, and he's doing less commercial movies. I mean, outside he does a few. He's got that Christmas Carol movie coming out soon with, I think, is it Paramount or something? I forget which studio that's at. Heidi Klum. But other than that, I mean, he's doing a lot more of this kind of prestige fare, and this is not an easy novel to adapt. So it's considered one of the greatest 20th century literature pieces of all time. So, but we'll see what it turns into. His redemption tour, you could call it that if you want. But Johnny Depp is an amazing actor, regardless of what you think of, has been a great actor. So we'll see what he does with this. Certainly, he's gone further with it than a lot of those other directors did. So. Not that he's directing, but just in general.
Right. But yeah, very intriguing. I'd watch it. Love Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anyway. Leonardo DiCaprio says AI can't be art because there's no humanity to it. Yeah. No fucking shit. Preaching to the choir, man.
I'm not. Are you surprised? It's a little obvious, but I think it comes from a bigger interview, and it just again he's stating his position on the situation. But the thing about AI is AI doesn't feel like it's very human today, but one day it might. So we might have to change our perspective down the road. But as of right now, where AI is, it's not really even intelligent in this sense compared to human intelligence.
I mean, although
I'm not surprised.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio still likes AR because it's in its infancy, and that's right where he likes them. So I think he likes them young. So AI is still young. So I think he likes it like that.
I'm not sure how you managed to work that back there, but anyway, we'll just keep on.
Anyway. Speaking of things that begin with L, the Lincoln Lawyer sets season 4 premiere and drops first photos. I didn't realize this fucking shit was still on.
It's actually, this has been really popular as a show on Netflix. Again, this is the thing about Netflix. They're so big. They have their own ecosystem. There's a lot of people out there who only have Netflix. And, that's it. That's all their entertainment. And that's what Netflix likes to be. That's what they're positioned themselves as. And this has been a surprisingly successful show for them. Wasn't Matthew McConaughey also in? This is technically part of the same continuity as the movie. And I think Matthew McConaughey made cameos.
I'm pretty sure it's a whole different thing, but I just didn't realize. I thought this was greenlit 10 years ago. I know the movie came out in 2011, and then soon after it got that, but I don't realize.
No, we talked about season 3 last year. I don't. Well, I'm just saying. I think I remember talking season 4. Yeah, sure. I'm not surprised by this. It's. If anything, I'm surprised a Netflix show has lasted this long. So. Yeah, there's that.
It's on Netflix. It's apparently really good. So, congrats. And it's based on. Well, it's based on a book. The Matthew McConaughey was in the film. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats to this guy.
Yep.
Anyway, YouTube TV is adding 10 genre-specific subscription plans, including a sports bundle. It's just I'm so sick of streaming. What are your thoughts on this, Dan?
Well, I looked at this, and I think if you scroll down, we can take a look at what those genres are. But in general, I looked at this and I was like, well, that's another step that YouTube TV is taking to become more like cable. It's not a surprise. I think they see an opportunity here as one of the biggest of these streaming, cable subscription services. I'm calling it streaming cable, but there's a different name for them. But essentially the idea is they're trying to replicate, some of the model that the Dish Network in the U.S. or I don't know, DirecTV and all these other services. Comcast has Xfinity and stuff. Streaming is basically becoming cable at this point, you know. So not surprised. They've
not
got
as good
millions
because
of
you still
subscribers.
get ads and yet you're paying more. So, woohoo.
Well, I mean, you're paying kind of similar, but I think the pricing power is not quite the same. Like with Comcast, they're still able to, like, you know, in Spectrum, they're able to bundle it with like internet service on top of it. Whereas here, like YouTube TV can't offer you a bundle like that because they don't offer internet service. Like unless you have Google Fiber, I don't know if that's really a thing anymore. So, but like, you're right in that sense. So. Yeah,
Indeed.
YouTube TVs
Anyway.
cost twice as much as what it used to cost me when I first signed up. So,
But last bit of quick hit news: John Cena announces a 5-year WWE ambassador contract following his in-ring retirement. So yeah, this man's never fucking leaving, just like The Rock. Dan, you're the wrestling expert. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, look, I was surprised to see because of course, this upcoming Saturday is his retirement match. And he said he's done wrestling after that. But I think it's just been made out to the idea that he's never going to be in a WWE ring again. Now, of course, you know, the implication is he's never going to wrestle in a match again. But signing a 5-year ambassador contract is not surprising because once he's retired from, you know, in-ring competition, he can still promote WWE. He's a lifelong fan of the company. He's always going to be one of the biggest proponents for the WWE. So I can't, you know, imagine that he won't be around the company and make appearances. But you know, not being in matches, I can see that too. Like he might show up at a WrestleMania and, like, you know, give an attitude adjustment to some young wrestler just to get the pop from the audience, but he's not gonna be in a match again, which I understand. He's always been a company man, like Dark Lead Eric said. So it's not surprising. I am looking forward to the Saturday night's main event. It's gonna be his final match. He is the greatest of all time in terms of, like, you know, WWE and wrestling as a whole. And it's rare to see somebody who is every bit the man in real life that they are playing as a character on television. Because, like, you know, Hulk Hogan, we all know, like, who Terry Bollea as a person was. Far from perfect, Ric Flair, like, guys like that. Even The Rock, like, you know, the Eagles. Like, John Cena genuinely feels he's, like, a good person in real life, much like he has been, you know, in wrestling. So, yeah. He basically had the company on his shoulders for years, and he's still one of their biggest draws, and he's retiring. So, looking forward to the last match, and excited that he's gonna stick around with the WWE. He's probably just gonna be showing up every once in a while. He's not gonna be, like, showing up all the time. Like, he's probably similar to, like, a lot of legends who are retired have these similar deals that John Cena will have now.
Yeah. Yeah. Congrats to Mr. Cena. But that's it for quick hits, guys. No more quick hits. But thanks for playing. I mean, watching. But thanks for playing. Now, of course, we're going to get into DCU stuff. But thanks for watching the news portion of the show. Gonna get into a whole bunch of Supergirl stuff. So stay tuned and remember, be hashtag blessed, guys. Be hashtag blessed.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see
Right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing? I'm telling you, really, I'm doing sublime. I never wait in the stewardess line. I just go do it. I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it. How am I moving? I'm moving like you want to shine. Follow my lead. Don't listen to lies. I had to put me all in the line. That's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Hunka hunka!
Beautiful. Anyway, welcome back to the show, guys. I am, of course, your host. Where is it? There I am, John. Lovely to see you all. And then, of course, we have Dan. Dan here. Dan is here, guys.
Oh yeah.
I was just like, you know what? I'm moving it anyway. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk about a lot of the Supergirl stuff. And then after that, stick around. We're going to be talking about the latest in the the sale for Warner Brothers, because
And then
there are
everybody
now
fucking leaves because nobody wants to talk about
Well,
it.
no, actually, we had a good amount of you guys
No,
on
I
the
know
show
we had
for
a good
that
amount of people
yesterday.
the other day.
I will say, like, stick around, because today I've started to see reporting that there may be a situation where David Zaslav is likely out once, whether it's Paramount taking over or Netflix, and that will have an effect on the people that he put in place, even though they have contracts. Both Netflix and Paramount have money to like buy those contracts out. So if they wanted to like go in a different direction with DC, they could potentially still let James Gunn, Peter Safran go, or like with Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca at Warner Brothers. So we'll talk about
Yeah,
that
but
later.
Netflix
But you
hates
know,
making money, so that just seems par for the
no,
course.
I'm okay. I mean, no business hates making money. Otherwise, they would be out of business. But anyway, let's talk about DC right now. Then we'll get into that
Yes.
later. It's DC time, as Enterprise.
But the first bit of news that well, not really news, but just sort of a funny thing that he posted, is James Gunn posted this Sidney Happerstein on the wall in the Man of Tomorrow art department, and yeah, very amusing.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
no, it says, "Did you fill out the lunch order form?" I love it. It's again, it just goes to show you they've got a really good work culture there. So, and the art department and a lot of the teams that are working on pre-production for Man of Tomorrow are like just cranking away right now. They're busy because they're looking to start filming, it's early spring next year. So they probably already have locations scouted and they're building sets right now. The art department's a big part of that. They're probably working on costume designs. So it's good to see James Gunn sharing, the day to day. He doesn't give away too much, but what he does tell us, it's usually good information, or it's something that helps to show us that DC is in a good place, like they're in good spirits and they're working on a project that they're excited about. So yeah, I'm excited to see more from Man of Tomorrow, even though we're, right now, chances are we're not going to get anything official marketing wise from Man of Tomorrow for a while, because they're going to focus on Supergirl, which is what we are here for primarily today. But it's good. Like, we always love to see it, because not every filmmaker does that. Like, Craig Gillespie has, I don't even know if he's got a like Instagram or Threads account, and he's directing Supergirl, right? And he was at that press event this past Sunday with Millie Alcock, James, and Peter Safran. But of all of those people, it's like James Gunn is the one who usually posts about stuff like this. So it's good to bring the fans along for the ride. That's why I like it.
Yeah. Intriguing. But
Hey, Antonio.
yes, of
Hey.
course. But
Welcome
we're gonna move on
Antonio.
to.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Hang on, let me just
And hey,
close out
Pluto.
of some stuff.
Yep.
And then we gotta get into 1A, 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 and
1A!
there you go. Perfect. But apparently 1A is going to be on the Injustice 2 mobile game. Lex Luthor is going to be a playable character.
Soldiers.
Like. But he will make his, apparently according to this, he will make his grand entrance into Injustice 2. So he's either going to be a multiversal opponent or playable, most likely the former. So yeah, cool. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm not a big, gamer myself these days, because I've just got too much other stuff going on. But it's good to see that they're bringing these characters into the video game side of things, because that's how you do cross promotion and make that good money. Like, these are the things that you got to do for the new ownership of Warner Brothers, whoever is going to be like James Gunn, Peter Safran know what they're doing. We're going to keep them in place. So from that lens, I think this is good. It's also, I noticed this suit Lex Luthor is wearing here has more of that purple tinge, whereas in the movie it was more just your, basically straight up black and white suit. So this is more like that more traditional comic book purplish look to the Lex Luthor suit. So I do like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Antonio, we did talk about Scarlett Johansson potentially playing the Phantasm yesterday. There's some good fan art out there too. So yeah, it's good looking on that. But we don't know yet. But it wouldn't be a bad idea if she was playing Phantasm.
But yeah, that's
yeah.
it for DC quick hits though. That was quick. The DC quick hits were actually quick. But of course, we have the big thing in regards to what everyone wants us to talk about is indeed the Supergirl trailer and the Supergirl poster synopsis. We talked about a bunch of stuff yesterday. Now we're talking about it more so today because it is going to be premiering in about 12 hours. So get pumped for that. But they did release this on Instagram. Well, James Gunn did specifically. And truth, justice, whatever. Like very much the vibe that they're going for here, and I like it. I think it's an overall really good poster. I think it showcases the vibe they're going for very well. It's nice, bright, colorful. It's got the spray. Like like I like the overall vibe. I think I really like the outfit. I really like the I like how she has like the fucking stupid trench coat thing. Like, okay. Um, so I like this poster.
I do like the
And what
look
are
of
your thoughts
this.
on this?
I love it. I love the look. It's again consistent with what we were seeing before with like the initial teaser poster, I guess, from a few months ago. Do we know what the runtime for the trailer is? Was that something that we saw? I think there was just
No, we
rumors
were
and
discussing the
speculation.
Doomsday runtime for the
Yeah,
trailer, but I
I'd
think for
imagine
this it was like 2 minutes ish, maybe less,
yeah,
maybe a
I'd
minute and
imagine
a
it's
half.
gonna be 2 minutes and some change. That's what they tend to be usually. Yeah, Figure Drawing saying hello, by the way. Guardians of the Super Galaxy Girl. Well, we'll talk about the footage because they did release another teaser for the trailer, so we'll get into that later in the segment. But they did release that. I mean, 1 minute 25 second. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit shorter. We knew the first Superman trailer that came out almost a year to the day at this point. That was like what, like almost 3 minutes, but that was like the very first thing in this DCU. So in terms of like a movie, so they needed to do that. But John, I think overall this is a really cool poster. Again, it just does everything. It tells you, in terms of just a picture is worth 1,000 words. It tells you who Supergirl sort of is as a personality, how much she cares or does not care, to justice for whatever. The logo is spray painted. It's got a more grungy, gritty look to it. People are comparing it to Guardians of the Galaxy. And you can see the colors are still very bright, but at the same time, there's more of the grungy texture to it. And Supergirl is gonna be less punk rock in the way Superman is, and more punk rock in in a different way, I suppose. But the synopsis from yesterday, which isn't official but it seems official, also kind of describes that she's gonna have a lot of character development to go through. And so I like that
Right.
we are clearly seeing here what looks like a version of Kara Zor-El where she starts off in the very beginning, like somebody who's clearly got a lot of trauma on like deep beneath her, and then at the same time she's just wanting to have fun and enjoy her 21st birthday, but obviously she's going to be confronted by some stuff where she'll have to, like Superman had to kind of redefine like who he thinks of himself as a person and why in the movie this year. Like maybe Supergirl will go through a similar journey at least. By the way, Antonio is saying, do you talk about the composer? He's done Game of Thrones and another Warner Brothers TV show. Yeah, I think we talked about it a little while ago when the news came out that, who is going to be composing the Supergirl soundtrack. They've got somebody good. I'm forgetting his name, but I do remember we talked about that. So, again, he's not like, a Michael Giacchino or a Hans Zimmer or anything like that. So he's like a step or two below that. That doesn't mean he can't do a good job. But we will have to wait and see. I mean, we're going to find out literally in about 12 hours from now what it's all going to look like and sound like. So, yeah. I don't know if it's the look of the teaser as cinematography, like the Civil War look. It's also don't put too much stock into the look of the movie just yet, because they're still working on it, and usually the color grading gets tweaked as they go into the final stages of post-production.
Yeah, I mean, look at Superman.
So,
The original teaser was like very blue, and
yeah,
they eased that up in the final film. So
yeah. I mean, the person who's doing the music for this worked on Game of Thrones. I mean, in Game of Thrones, it's got one of the most iconic TV show, soundtracks of all time. And yeah, Ramin Djawadi actually also did the theme for the first Iron Man movie, with like the guitar riffs and everything. So I do remember that, and he's done some good work, good to great work. So I think his guitar and like those other elements, just the way that he works. That's all, like, and the instrumentation he's known for, I think fits with the theme of Supergirl. But like going back to what I was saying earlier, yeah, it just it's completely on point. The marketing for this is perfect. What were you saying, John, before? Sorry, I forgot.
No,
Yeah.
you know, I think no, I just like the vibe of this, and I think this is overall looks pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It is gonna. There's gonna be definitely comedy to it, but also there's gonna be darker moments in this movie. James Gunn's already mentioned that before, so wouldn't be surprised that they'll, like, people are probably gonna die in this film. I don't know how dark they're gonna go. We don't know the
Oh, hey, look,
official
a
rating,
previous
but it's probably not
Supergirl
rated
is
R.
commenting on the Supergirl image. She played
Hey.
Supergirl in Superman Unbound, Molly C. Quinn. I
Mhm.
always wanted her as a live action Supergirl, so it's interesting how
Yeah,
she did post.
there is like
a
an
comment.
electrical guitar element to the soundtrack. They've already been teasing that in the 2 teasers we've gone to the trailer. So
I mean,
yeah,
Superman had like an electric guitar
yeah,
vibe. 'Cause that's
absolutely,
like John Murphy's vibe. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Because they did like a little bit of like a motion poster combined with like another little teaser to this. So yeah, we're probably gonna get the character posters as well down closer to the release of the movie, or maybe with like the first official trailer. Because remember, nowadays with what we expect tomorrow is like a teaser trailer. Because I know a lot of websites keep saying what we've been getting the last couple of days are teaser to the trailers. The way they refer to them is these are just teasers, like little clips like that lead into the actual first trailer. But the way Hollywood movies these days work, especially at the big studio level, which by the way will probably include Lobo tomorrow, we'll find out. But the first trailer is like a teaser trailer that's meant to give you more of the feel of the movie, who's in the movie, you know, what the movie sounds like, what it looks like, sort of like, you know, a high level overview of what to expect. Then the first official story trailer, you know, is going to be basically the second trailer that we get, the second full-length trailer, which will probably be, you know, around early springtime next year. And that's gonna give us pretty much an idea what the story of the movie is gonna be. We know they're adapting Woman of Tomorrow. I also want to say, John, people keep expecting that this is gonna be a straight up, you know, adapting the Woman of Tomorrow comic book directly to screen. I just want to tell you folks, if you're expecting a direct adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow comic book, don't. You will be disappointed. Go in there and treat this as a Supergirl movie. It's gonna be using Woman of Tomorrow as a heavy source of reference, but do not expect this movie to be a direct adaptation. So if things don't line up, this is not like, even for Harry Potter movies, like they change stuff up, right?
Yeah.
So just don't expect that. But we won't get a lot about, like, you know, a lot of insight about the story of the movie until that second trailer. What we're expecting tomorrow is more, you know, the look, feel, sound of the movie itself. And that's what these posters have so far. The poster here, the one before this, and also those little teaser clips. They're just kind of giving us an idea. They're showcasing some of the locations, which we can go back to the set photos, and we have sort of seen some of those and what they look like before they turn them into, you know, what they are in the movie. And then, like you were saying, John, like with the Superman trailer last year, the first teaser trailer, clearly they just like they did the basic color correction to the shots, did the matching, and then they just kind of threw on like a basic LUT so that everything kind of looks similar. But clearly that wasn't the final color grade. So what you get to see tomorrow is not going to be the final look of the movie. So just make sure, I'm just saying, temper your expectations a little bit, that what we will be getting is not the finished product. It is a good preview, but it's not the finished product. And as far as like predicting what it's going to do with the box office, Pluto, I don't know. It's too early to say how much it's gonna do. 500 million is probably the goal for them, but I if it goes under that, I wouldn't be surprised. $120 million budget seems about right in terms of what they, you know, would this movie would warrant. If it's a little higher, I wouldn't be surprised. 120 does feel like the right number though. So but yeah, John, let's keep on rolling here. We got a few more looks at this that we got to talk about, and some photos from the actual teaser clip they released today as well.
So Supergirl trailer teaser features Krypton first look and Kara taking flight, Times Square countdown revealed. So we had the poster reveal. The full trailer is going to drop.
So the background for this is in New York City in Times Square, they had like a bunch of the digital billboards advertising to a countdown that ended at 1:15 p.m. Eastern. And then, you know, the billboard showed the poster, they showed the logo of the movie, and they showed like the little clip that we're going to talk about that we see those stills from here. And then it said the trailer is coming out tomorrow, like, and we know the actual time now. We'll get into that later as well. So yeah, that's basically, you know, the big marketing push. They're spending money doing this in Times Square, so there's, you know, millions of people who pass through Times Square every day, and they get a chance to, you know, see that Supergirl, one of the big movies, the big DC movie for next year, when it comes out, and the look at the film. So it's great exposure. So I don't think the budget for this movie is anywhere around 200 million. I doubt it. I mean, 120 might be a little low, but I don't think it's 100. It's like 200. It's probably like closer to 150, if that.
Yeah.
But let's keep going.
Yeah. So this so as it says here, we have our first looks to all of this, and I'll, you know, it's
we have
it's a
the
bit of
stills for this
awkward
we can
thing.
take a look at later in the
Yeah.
Deadline article, but and that's a good place to kind of judge, because we do, like I said, we do get a few looks at Supergirl, both as Kara and as Supergirl. So in and out of the costume.
I'll zoom
Yeah,
in a
CC
little.
Black. I would say the Doomsday trailer could be the most viewed trailer of all time. It certainly has the potential. It's a good question. Yeah, it certainly has the
Yeah.
potential. It would just depend on how good it is, and, you know, ultimately if people like it or not. So yeah, the 6/26/26 is a bit of a palindrome. I don't know if it's exactly a palindrome, the release date, but it is a bit of a palindrome. But John, we get a closer look at the costume against like that poster background, like a motion poster for Supergirl. I'm just continuing to be impressed by the design. It's simple and yet more. I like this design better than the Superman costume design, even though they're sort of similar in terms of the design principles. I like the color here, like it's a deeper blue almost. That might be more just a result of how this movie is going to be graded, the grittier look. You can see also like she's clearly tanned here, like Millie Alcock and stuff. She's got a bit, you know, bit of dirt or whatever, like, so she's looking even more like a dirty blonde than like just your straight up blonde. So yeah, they've definitely given this movie a very stylized look already. Yeah. That looks nice. I mean, definitely, John, a lot of people, by the way, this photo here, well, that in the smoke, I'm sure that's gonna be one of the alien planets. A lot of people have been comparing like these stills and like what we have seen so far, the little bit of the footage, to like James Gunn's styling with Guardians of the Galaxy and Marvel. Do you agree that there are similarities there? That
I mean, literally, I feel like the only thing is like the Easter egg with the Walkman. Like it's got the orange like headphones. It's got that old school like Walkman.
Like the neon look, like in the colors, like the brown.
Yeah, like
that color of the trench coat.
and it takes that thing, and then like it takes place in space. Those are the only comparisons I can see to James. Like, because the thing is, from the footage we've seen, there is a bit of a stylistic, but it's very much like grittier, more brown, kind of more depressing. But that's kind of what it's supposed to be, because, you know, very different iteration of this hero, very different iteration to what the MCU did, those characters. So it's very different. Aura farming is essentially like they have like a aura. It's like a vibe. They look cool, and aura farming is when you're really looking cool and you're essentially farming all of the aura around you. You're farming all of the coolness and badassery like surrounding you. That's essentially
okay. I'll make it a little simpler explanation. Tony, if you have ever played those WWE video games and you have been like spamming the taunt buttons, that would be called aura farming. Like, you know, if you're Randy Orton and you're constantly doing the pose, like that's aura farming. That's basically what it is.
Anyway. But
yeah,
we have
earthy.
this
That's another way
very,
to
like,
put it.
as someone said, earthy photo. Then we have her in the bar getting drunk.
Okay, pause on this, because that bar we now can confirm, because remember that very first photo they put out, not the one where she's reading the comic, but the one from behind, you know, where we saw like the production logo, and then we just saw the back of her hair and stuff. That was, we were speculating whether she was like sitting in like a green room, or it was some kind of location shoot, or what it was, whether it was even part of the movie. And clearly this right here, if you look at those neon lights in the background, the orange and the green ones, John, that's clearly, that photo is it clearly was from one of the sets for
which
the movie.
I said way early on. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty damn awesome looking. And
Yeah.
here she is just taking a drink. Then we have her. It's kind of awkward looking because again these are screenshots.
Yeah.
But here she is flying again, more of those
Yep.
earthy kind of
It's flying, yep.
tones.
It's also similar to the style of Superman, but not quite like the really like in your face fisheye lens effect. So it's shot from a little further away, but she kind of moved most closer to you. So that's different. Slightly different from what James Gunn was doing to what Craig Gillespie's doing.
Yep.
this
Honestly,
is nice.
most of them, to be fair, most of them.
By the way, this here doesn't feel very physics accurate. This is more comic book stylization. Because when you wouldn't be punching,
What are you, Neil deGrasse Tyson?
no.
Now this is unrealistic. It's a movie, Neil. Of course, it's going to be unrealistic.
No, I'm just saying, like in even comic book movies, they usually don't show it this way because they're like, it's like because it seems like it's almost like she's punching through like a spider's web, so it sort of like peels with her. But like the atmosphere is just not dense enough at that edge of space. So when you're flying into space, like she's almost like she's punching through the atmosphere more literally in terms of the visual than what you would expect, which I mean I think is different from even what we saw in Superman. Like in Superman, when he's like taking the engineer up into space, you don't quite see it this way. It's a cool shot though. I do like the shot, and this is again vertical, so like I wonder what it's going to look like when we see the full aspect ratio. But yeah, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's it's not accurate to the physics of how things work, but again, it's a movie, so I get it.
And close up on Millie Alcock's face
and her street clothes. Is
Is
this the same planet as the Brie?
Well,
like
it looks like she's on Krypton because she's wearing those white tunic, and then it cuts to this. Looks kind of
Krypton.
I think this is Argo City because what
Argo,
Woman of
God,
Tomorrow?
but that means this is Krypton, right?
Well, Argo City is a chunk off of Krypton.
But I'm saying, like in this, are they gonna show it to us as part of Krypton, or are they gonna show it to us as its
what
own?
Argo City is essentially, Supergirl's origin is that Krypton blew up, but a chunk like floated off, like a piece of debris floated off, and they managed to make it like manageable, and then Supergirl and that gets launched off from there and then comes to Earth for whatever reason. I know in the movie it was like the dodecahedron fucking thing, where it's like it's the thing that powers our city. Go find it, Supergirl, because we're sending you for some reason. So what essentially this does is it essentially combines, from what I've heard, it combines a lot of different aspects from Supergirl's origin, like from the early origin to the modern origin. The early origin is Argo City. The modern origin is she was shipped off with Superman. So what I think they're doing here is like the chunk fucking floated away, but then I believe what happens in the comic is that like there's like because the thing is technically Argo City is one giant thing of kryptonite. So apparently everyone dies on Argo City because they get kryptonite poisoning. So what that is,
wow, that's dark.
So then she gets rocketed away. She lives, and she's the last one of Argo City, and that's the reason why she's like an alcoholic, is because she's like living with me. Did Krypton explode, but her home specifically, like everybody died and she couldn't do anything to stop it. So that's
kind of like she must have felt really helpless, like watching them die. Like
exactly, that's why she's like she's like drowning her sorrows away in like booze constantly, because that's how she's unhealthily dealing with her grief of
I mean, do you think there's any chance we get a Brainiac in this movie as a result of?
I don't think so. Because I mean, Brainiac has a bunch of different origins. I don't think they're gonna do the origin where Brainiac was the reason Krypton exploded. But but
as far as seeing a flashback of Krypton being destroyed, I guess that depends on how they adapt her origin, right, John? Because like you said, it would just depend on how all of that works and where Argo City
I don't know if they're straight adapting it from Woman of Tomorrow, or they're like borrowing more aspects. Again, it's more generalization, how Superman wasn't an adaptation of All-Star Superman. It just took various aspects. They're probably just taking aspects of Woman of Tomorrow and just fleshing it out into their own thing.
Yeah, I don't think she's drunk. She's a drunk to be funny. There's clear, if you know about the Woman of Tomorrow comic, that that's a source, or it's basically a big source of inspiration, then you know that there's a lot more to it than that. Like there, and then that's the whole reason why they're doing this. It's they want to give Supergirl the proper big, studio movie treatment that she's never really gotten before as a character. The same way that
she did in
got
the
from
80s,
Superman.
but it was not very good.
Yeah. Can't believe people are still talking about aura farming in the chat. It is dark though, Tony. I mean, the origin, because it depends on how they show it. Like, for example, in Avengers, what was it? Avengers Infinity War, we get to see a young Gamora when Thanos and his army show up and they literally kill half the people on the planet, and like we see that he's sort of like shields her eyes from it, but she clearly knows what happened because she hears the sounds of the guns. That was pretty dark, but like they did it in a movie that was like PG-13. Whereas in Watchmen was rated R, so it just depends on how you showcase it.
I think how they do it is, there's different ways of doing dark. Yeah, exactly. She's still in, I want to say, either the angry stage or the depression stage. It depends how they make it work, because like if you don't, the Kubler-Ross model of grief, where it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, she is not close to the acceptance part, so I assume she's in the anger part, where she's just like really pissed off at the world, doesn't want to fucking deal with people. So she's kind of just dealing with it in, again, it's a very unhealthy way of dealing with grief, so that's why it is what it is.
No, but Swag fan, I agree with you. I think we all agree with you that seeing people you know and love die, and not just like die, like they fell over and died, like they probably did. The idea with kryptonite poisoning is like it's a slow death that happens over time. Like it doesn't happen in an instant. Like you didn't get shot or anything like that, or stabbed to death. And the fact that she couldn't stop it and then she gets sent away, it's like she must have like an imposter syndrome, just survivor's guilt. Right, so like it's, and then just being depressed, like, because and then she can't go back there. I don't know if I guess that it can't.
It's like on the surface, it's like seen as funny, like how she was in the at the end of Superman, where it's like, aha, she's funny, she gets drunk, she's partying. That's not how that's so carefree, that's so bad. But really, then what this movie is going to be about is going to be about like, oh no, that's not just her being like, haha, carefree little chick who just wants to get drunk. It's like, I am dealing with massive amounts of fucking guilt and trauma, and I don't know how to properly deal with that. And so, By the way, hello, King's Portal. We are super excited for the trailer. And the fact she knows that, as far as they're aware, it's just her and Clark, are the only two. Then Crypto, but like in terms of, the Kryptonians, I guess Crypto would be a Kryptonian life form. But I'm just saying. But anyway, I just quickly, I wanted to address this. Hunter E was mentioning, because I think a lot of people are like projecting their expectations of this movie in the context of what James Gunn wants. Yes, ultimately James Gunn signs off on all the creative decisions, especially the big ones. I'm sure he gives the directors of these individual projects a little bit of lead. First of all, Yash, by the way, hello. We didn't get really the trailer yet, so I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, the point is, we have to like remember, this is the very first movie in the DCU that James Gunn did not direct. It's only the second one, so like it's not like there's been 5. But it's also the first project that James Gunn did not write and direct. He's mostly just a producer. So you can't just be like, oh, James Gunn did this, James Gunn did that. Sure, it's like he had a hand in, he had a say in it and stuff, but not every creative decision in this you can attribute to James Gunn. Craig Gillespie's the director. So if you're going to put your blame somewhere or praise somewhere, then make sure to praise Craig Gillespie for the work that he's done and everybody else on this movie. And of course, James Gunn has played a part. He's still one of the co-CEOs. He's like the lead creative at DC. So he's going to continue to play a role. But I just want to, make clear that, and like Hunter was saying, this is not a James Gunn movie. It's a James Gunn produced movie, but it is a Craig Gillespie directed movie. So you just got to remember that difference.
Yeah, let's keep on going. We have a few more stills from the little teaser to the teaser trailer that we got today.
Not gonna lie, the
second
guy
of
on
them.
the left kind of looks like Christian Bale from Thor 4 More Thor.
Yeah, no, it does. And the guy on the well, I was gonna say he looks like the guy who said who? Why am I forgetting his name?
Jimon Honsu.
Jimon Hansu.
Ooh.
But the lasers and stuff, you could clearly see like these guys, they have like similar approach to showcasing alien humanoid, like, you know, life forms. I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know if they're humans or not, but like it's similar to what James Gunn did with the Guardians. Like, and again, this is very little evidence, so I can make a very surface level comparison. Wait, what are you talking? Okay, Dark Leader. I don't know what you meant by that. Yeah. As far I lost track of what I was saying. I'm making a very surface level comparison in terms of this looks similar to Guardians in some ways, but that's only going off of like 10 seconds of video. Tomorrow we're gonna get a much better idea what it actually is all about. So,
and then they're obviously pointing their guns at Supergirl. Ruthie is next to her. Look, this reminds me of Krypton, the show Krypton. So.
Yeah, it does. You know what? That's actually a really good point. It does. I wonder if that informed some of their creative choices here, because that was a good show, even though it was in Sci-Fi and like, you know, cable networks dying and stuff. I thought that show got canceled a little too early.
It did.
Like they should have kept on
like
going.
They just
and they
were
had a
like,
logo
oh hey,
there.
let's get things started. We're gonna team up with Lobo to go after Brainiac who kidnapped Jor-El. Canceled. And then they were gonna get to the Ran-Thanagarian War, which would have been awesome, but turns out that Wallace Day's character was a Thanagarian, so they had a whole bunch of stuff planned, and then fuck you.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering actually, John, do you want to do a live reaction to this tomorrow, like we did?
I mean, we could try.
You know,
I'll try to wake up on time. I don't make.
I remember
any
last
promises.
year.
Hey, to be fair, I got up at the right time, and you were early.
No,
so.
I said we were gonna do it. Okay, maybe there's still probably a misunderstanding there, but anyway, tomorrow if we do it live, okay. So I think what we will do is we will just go live at like right before noon, and then we'll watch the trailer, do a
like
quick
11:30. I think that's a good.
Yeah, we'll do the reaction and stuff, and then, you know, we'll leave it at that. I don't know if you want to do a full DCU daily that early in the day. We could, but yeah, we'll plan on doing that. 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, we'll go live. We'll watch the trailer with you guys. So if you are watching with us, we'll, you know, go over it. We'll look at the stills from the trailer, and then we'll, you know, just see how we feel about it. I mean, it so far everything looks great. It's 1 p.m. for Tony where he is in Canada. It's 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Speaking of which, John, you actually found the trailer on YouTube, so it's already up on the DC website.
It's technically already on.
It's
you
like
just like have the people like talking about it, like like I can't wait. It premieres in 11 hours. You know, here it is. It's gonna be a live premiere, so get pumped, guys.
Yeah. No, it looks like this is gonna be one of the bigger trailer launches. Obviously, like we were talking about, they want to get ahead of the Avengers trailer, which the rumor is that will release next week when Avatar comes out in theaters. So yeah, it's gonna be to like be in the conversation, because next week you got Avatar 3, you got Doomsday, the Odyssey trailer, like there's all these, you know, other movies, and the Spider-Man Brand New Day is probably not too far behind. So I'm glad that James Gunn chose this week to let Supergirl have her time in the limelight and just get into the spotlight to herself for a little while. But yeah. I mean, Supergirl's, by the way, you wouldn't anticipate, I just want to quickly point out, as in just taking a, you know, zoom out view a little bit, Supergirl isn't a character that you would have thought would be the second DCU movie. She's sort of she's a bit of a derivative character, right? Like she's not really like, you know, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. There was like characters, then you have like other derivatives of them, like Nightwing and Robin and Supergirl, and such. So, but at the same time, like while we wait for a Wonder Woman, I'm glad that Supergirl, because Supergirl hasn't gotten that big screen, you know, adaptation the way that Superman has had so many of, and Batman obviously. So I'm excited to see what to do with it. This is the most expensive, the most big budget, high profile Supergirl movie ever made. They've got a tremendous actress in Millie Alcock playing Kara Zor-El, and of course you know, we've also got Jason Momoa as Lobo. Hopefully we'll see him. I wonder, you know what, John, in terms of what we may or may not see in the trailer tomorrow, or later today, depending on where you are or when you're watching the show. Um, yeah. I wonder if we're gonna see any creme on the Yellow Hill, because Matthew Shawnars, has that legal trouble he's currently in. So I wonder if they did kind of clip him out or if they will show him. There were some rumored descriptions for the trailer talking about there will be a little bit of Lobo walking in a hallway. So if that turns out to be true, then we'll see. But yeah, by the way, the television pilot on CBS for Supergirl cost a lot more. But after the first season, the show went from CBS to the CW and stopped filming in LA and started filming in Vancouver. So the quality went down because the budget went down. So here, on the other hand, this is like $120, $150 million movie.
For like one season. Like the first season was good. The second season was terrible. The first half of season 3 was like had a lot of potential. It was really good. And then it just went downhill from there. Like everything, I didn't even bother to watch the last season. I thought it was really dumb.
I watched a little bit of it because I wanted to see how it ended. They had a good Martian Manhunter adaptation, but he always was playing second fiddle
because he's like so powerful, and
I mean, they nerfed Superman. They made Superman a jobber in the show, and then they had a redemption arc for Superman with Superman and Lois, but. This Supergirl, we're gonna find out like how powerful is she? Like, what does she have the same exact abilities as Superman? Also, the abilities come from the Red Sun. So I wonder how they're gonna address the idea that when she's flying around and going to these other planets, is she taking spaceships? Because we know there's like a big spaceship set that they had a lot of battle fight sequences that is shot on.
So
but there's
with
rumors
the Red
we'll see
Sun,
that. So
it does like essentially make them human. Makes them bleed, all that shit, and red sunlight.
Oh, the yellow sun. I meant like if she doesn't have a yellow sun in the system she's in, like is she gonna be Supergirl the way? Like is she gonna be super, or is she just another girl?
I don't. If there's a red sun, probably not. Hence why she goes to the red sun planets to get drunk. Because she can feel the effects. And with all of that, so. You would just need, like, it depends on her power level, because in the New 52, I remember that when she was sent off from Krypton, the reason that she didn't make it to Earth until after Kal-El was because she was, like, rotating around the gravitational pull of the sun and, like, supercharging her cells with yellow sun radiation. So, there's that. So arguably she's more powerful than Superman, at least in that continuity. So they might do something like that where she's like much more powerful. We'll see. I don't know if he's taking any inspiration from the New 52. I mean, I hope not, because the New 52 was a weird experiment. But I think with all of this, I would imagine like Red Sun, it depends on who's writing it. But I think for the most part, Red Sun is just like you become human and you lose all your powers, essentially, for a Kryptonian. And then you need like, it would take a while radiation to like get into your body, get into your cells for you to really become fully powerful again.
Yeah, so I do wonder, like, because they obviously played that into Superman, but
Thanks for the super chat.
Thank you, and we did actually talk about that, the countdown in Times Square. So thank you again for the. By the way, YouTube Studio looks completely different today. But yeah, Enterprising, they had the whole countdown. It ended at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time in Times Square. So it's again, this is the kind of marketing we'll hopefully expect to see. That
the
goes
reds,
viral.
it's like ours is a yellow sun, the Red Sun, SUN, plus. Although there is Superman Red Sun, SON, where he was raised in.
Well, I think it's
Ukraine.
in terms of cosmology and proper. I think it's referencing dwarf star, like what they're called brown dwarfs, because they look more like red in the color, like in terms of like the color spectrum that we see in, or the light spectrum that we see in. So. Yeah, it's and obviously, well, basically, a brown dwarf has not nearly enough power that is radiating out that the yellow sun, like our sun in the solar system, does. So I think that's been built into the mythology of Superman, that he's more powerful here because the extra radiation energy that he's able to absorb in from the yellow sun in our system, whereas in Krypton, their sun was like more of a brown dwarf, which didn't give them. That's why they're not like flying around on Krypton, but they are able to do that on Earth. So that the question becomes, how much is that going to affect her powers when she's flying around in space, or like going to different planets with different systems? Are they all going to have yellow suns? There's different kind. There's even more power. There's even more bigger, more powerful stars than what we have here. Again, this is more of like the science nerdy part of things. I don't think they need to go very deep into it as or have it even be a part of the story. But it could be one way to kind of like, you know, limit the power set of these characters, in a way that would make sense, like logically makes sense. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of the bigger movies next year. I don't know how much money it's going to make. It's hard to guess, but the trailer is going to give us a good idea, and a good place to start. I think tomorrow after we react to the trailer, maybe we should do some super early predictions for the box office, because that would be fun to do. And then maybe we can compare them to the predictions we made for Superman and see how those ended up, of course. By the way, a lot of you guys watching, hit the like button if you haven't already. If you're enjoying the show, we do appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. But yeah, John, anything else? Do you have any other expectations? Anything you'd like to see or not like to see in the trailer tomorrow?
I think I want to see a little bit of Lobo. Obviously, I don't want it to just be Lobo. I just want to see at least like the back of his head or something, or like him walking or something, or him saying like, well, main man or Bestitch or something like that. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Now, I would love to see not only obviously, you know, building on the footage we already saw in these two little teaser clips, but I do want to see
yet.
some Lobo. Yeah. Right ain't over yet, guys, because as we finish up the Supergirl talk, we're going to continue to talk about Warner Brothers and DC. Hey, hello, O'Shea, and stick around because there's a lot more going on with the Netflix Paramount stuff, and it may actually have a real effect on DC and Warner Brothers, like studios and what they might be up to post-sale, whether it's Netflix or Paramount owning them. But Supergirl, remember, we're going to be live tomorrow. I think we just kind of made our minds up today as we were doing the show. That we'll be live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, a half hour before the trailer goes live. We'll be previewing the trailer, then we'll be reacting to it live. We'll go over, you know, the frame-by-frame details. We'll speculate on what that means. We'll maybe do our early predictions for what the box office for Supergirl might be based on this like one trailer, the very first one. And then yeah, we'll get your opinions on it. So be sure to join us in the live chat. Until then, John, I mean, I think that's all we got for now as far as DCU Daily goes. So thanks for sticking around for that part of the show. And with that, we're going to say goodbye to John. Remember, you can see him on the Geek Informant, or you got what's the other channel? There's two of them.
Cool Kids Movie Reviews. We are doing a review of Silent Night, Deadly Night this week, and we're going to be doing Avatar: Fire and Ash next week. So very exciting.
Yep. And with that, I'm gonna pivot over to talking about the bidding war that is Warner Brothers and Netflix. So thanks again, John, for an amazing show. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Until then,
goodbye, everybody. Good night, everybody.
We're gonna switch. Let's start talking about the bidding war continues for Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount versus Netflix. We know those are the two players that are left in the game right now. The question is, who is out ahead? Because if you guys watched the show yesterday, I mentioned, and stick with me here because, you know, my voice is not feeling the best today. So, you know, if I'm a little bit slow on the turn, but anyway, thank you for watching us live. Let's talk about where we are at. Right? If you saw the show yesterday, the bidding war for Warner Brothers has continued because while they signed a deal with Netflix last Friday to make that deal happen, and Netflix now, if things continue as they are, and if they get regulatory approval, Netflix will be the new owner of Warner Brothers long term. Paramount decided they had a better offer and they wanted to take it directly to the shareholders in a hostile takeover attempt. So thank you, O'Shea, by the way. So let's talk about what is next, where things are right now. So we're going to start there. Of course, like I mentioned, there's now a hostile takeover bid from Paramount, which the shareholders can directly look at the details and then basically tender their shares to Paramount, aka giving Paramount the ability to buy those shares off. And then if Paramount gets a majority of the Warner Brothers shares, then they can basically swap out the Warner Brothers board with people who are favorable to Paramount, and then will vote for the Paramount deal over the Netflix deal. So the timeline for all of this. Paramount's offer is going to be on the table till January 8th, and Warner Brothers Discovery has said their board will have a recommendation for the shareholders by this next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday on the 19th. So it's gonna be basically 10 business days from when the tender offer was put up by Paramount on the 8th of December. And we'll see. I mean, there are rumors right now that Warner Brothers Discovery will stick with what they signed with Netflix. We'll talk about that too. But the investors out there are betting in Wall Street that a higher bid for Warner Brothers is coming. And they're not just saying it's coming from, potentially Netflix. They're saying Paramount and Netflix will both potentially end up with higher bids on the table. And I'll talk about what that means in a minute, and how that affects, everything that Warner Brothers has, including HBO, DC, the DCU. We were just talking about Supergirl earlier in the show. There's a whole new cinematic universe that is ongoing, but will that be affected? We'll talk about that. We are all excited about the Supergirl trailer that drops less than 12 hours from now, and we will be here live talking about it. So make sure to join us when the trailer drops. We'll react to it live and break it down. But talking about this merger, so the investors out, who are currently, whether they own Paramount or Netflix or Warner Brothers, they're hedging their bets. They're saying we're gonna get probably another bid from both sides. So what basically ends up happening in these situations is, if a bidding war starts, people start to buy more of the stock of the company that's about to be acquired. So Warner Brothers stock prices are going up. Meanwhile, the stock price for Paramount has dipped slightly, and Netflix has gone down quite a bit. They have lost several $billion in just the last 5 days. And if you look back at the last few months since Netflix got involved in all this bidding process, they've lost like over $100 billion in their value, which is a big chunk of it. That's like 20% roughly of the value that it was for Netflix. So the Netflix shareholders don't like this. Paramount shareholders a little more optimistic, but ultimately Warner Brothers is winning out because the share price is going up and up and up. So that alone might force the two companies to raise their offer because of that, because the company at on Wall Street is going to be worth a lot more money. But so far, it looks like both bids, the hostile offer from the hostile takeover offer from Paramount and Netflix, are still, pretty much on par with each other. There's not a huge difference. Depending on how you look at it, one might be better than the other, but it just depends on how you look at the value of the Discovery Global networks, right? We talked about that yesterday. Now, I think Dark Elite Eric was mentioning this earlier in the show, so I found this tweet. Lucas Shaw from Bloomberg had posted this article talking about how the bidding war for Warner Brothers is now expected to last months, because it's already been going on for weeks, if not months. Paramount has been bidding for months. They have already put 6 bids in. Their current bid is the 6th one on the table. For Netflix is at least their second, if not the third, which won, but apparently, the ride ain't over yet. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people involved in this process from all sides, and the Lucas Shaw here was reporting that it might take 5 or 6 months before we have a winner. And as part of that process, what's going to happen in the immediate future is next Friday, when I mentioned that Warner Brothers Discovery is meant to give their recommendation to the shareholders about the Paramount offer, to take over the company, the hostile takeover offer. They're expected, the Warner Brothers Discovery board, to announce next week that they're sticking with the Netflix deal that they signed last week. And then Paramount at that point has a few options, like Lucas is saying here. They can go ahead with a tender offer to persuade the shareholders, which they already are. David Ellison sent a letter to the shareholders we'll talk about later on, that was sent out today. They can also sue or offer more money. So they can sue, and they've already alleged that this was an unfair process that was rigged in favor of Netflix. So they can take that to a court case, or they can just up their offer. That's probably the more likely thing to happen. They'll probably up the number on their offer to make it more enticing, to maybe just get the straight board approval, or maybe just get more shareholders to just tender them their shares, basically sell them their shares to Paramount, that is. Now, that's what Lucas Shaw expects to happen here as well. A lot of analysts saying Paramount will up its offer, and as a result of that, Netflix will do the same, and then that's how we will get into the bidding war. So And then the New York Post was saying something similar, but they were also talking about how I mentioned earlier the shares for Paramount and Netflix have been going down a lot more for Netflix than Paramount. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers Discovery, their shares are going up, and this is part of what's called, I think it's a merger arbitrage. It's like a financial industry term, which basically is the idea that when a merger acquisition is happening, people start buying the shares for the company that's being bought because they know they're going to get paid more than the stock price. That's why the deal is usually made. Like, a Paramount is offered $30 per share, and the value and the stock price for Warner Brothers, I don't know if it's gone above $30 per share, but it was definitely not as high earlier in the week. So whoever buys those shares now, they'll make a profit. So that's what's happening right now. But as far as what the shareholders think about the two offers, now that they've had some time, a few days to think about this, there were a couple of big investors here in this article and a couple other ones I saw that one of the major, media investors, like some of these names, people who manage big funds, or like they're folks who, are famous for investing and giving advice to other investors. Mario Gabelli, he said on Tuesday that it was highly likely that he would tender his clients' Warner Brothers Discovery shares to Paramount. So he's a media investor. He manages multiple funds, and he's picking Paramount in this race so far. So he already thinks Paramount has got the better offer, and so a lot of it has to do with the fact that Paramount is offering all cash, whereas Netflix has a part of it is their stock, Netflix stock, and then the majority of it is going to be in cash, but that creates some complications, and we'll get into that again later on. But I mentioned like risk arbitration, like the idea of that, and you can see here, it basically means that Warner Brothers their stock value will keep going up until this goes through, and that might end up ultimately costing both Paramount and Netflix more money. Especially if the bidding war continues. Now, as far as what the other people in Hollywood think about this, we've been talking about it the last few days. Theater owners have been sounding the alarm that the Netflix deal will not be good for business. A lot of producers don't like the idea because that means there's one less player in the market who can buy their movies and their packages and their scripts. So we have also seen a lot of unions like put out statements, like SAG-AFTRA, I believe they put out a statement, PGA and the DGA, they all were like putting out like statements saying that we need to understand what this means, because on the surface this is not good news for the far Hollywood. One of the original, legacy studios, Warner Brothers, will no longer be its own independent studio anymore. And even though they've been bought and sold in the past, they were always kind of being able to like stay their own thing. Now they're gonna like merge with either a Netflix, which is another media company, unlike AT&T, which wasn't quite, they weren't really a media company in the same sense, or AOL, and even back in the day, or they will merge with Paramount, which is another studio. So now two studios become one. So is it a pro-worker deal? Well, Lindsay Doherty, who's one of the leaders of the Teamster union, she was saying like she wants to see the data, she wishes that David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers, leaves our industry and never comes back. So clearly, and this is she's not the first person to say this. A lot of people in Hollywood, especially a lot of people who are representing or are below the line workers on movies, they're not fans of David Zaslav, because David Zaslav is a deal maker. He's more of a businessman. He likes the glamour of Hollywood, but a lot of people think he's more of an outsider. He's not somebody who came up from a background of making movies and producing movies. Somebody like Mike DeLuca, who's been doing that for decades and is one of the big executives in Warner Brothers now, Warner Brothers Pictures co-CEO or co-chair alongside Pam Abdi. Unlike him, unlike even Bob Iger, who came up through Disney over the years, David Zaslav did not come from that background. He comes from the TV background. I believe he was at NBC a long time ago and stuff. He's really more of a business person, and he's ruffled a lot of feathers over the last few years. But yeah, let me see what you guys are saying in the comments. Yeah, we talked about the Lucas Shaw tweet, so there's that. But let's keep on going here. The Las Vegas, there's a lawsuit already, being litigated, or like they just put this out. I saw this today, and I'm like, okay, this was a bit sooner than expected. It doesn't look like this particular lawsuit is going to go anywhere, though. So a Las Vegas-based HBO Max subscriber sues Netflix over $72 billion Warner Brothers deal, and this is from IGN, of course. This person is an HBO Max subscriber who has never subscribed to Netflix. They are arguing in their lawsuit against Warner Brothers for this deal that, hey, the deal threatens to reduce competition in the US subscription video on demand market, aka SVOD, subscription video on demand. That's what Netflix is a streaming service that you pay for. That's what HBO Max is. So this particular person, who remains unnamed, they have filed a lawsuit over this deal, and they're saying that it's because, as an HBO Max subscriber, if Netflix buys up HBO Max, that's going to drive up prices, because all of a sudden Netflix is going to be like, you need to pay us more for our service. And, you know, HBO Max might cost more if there's a bundle or whatever. And there will be less competition. So, you know, HBO Max, they're saying in this lawsuit, is one of those competitors that keeps the price pressure on Netflix's price. And even though Netflix prices kept on going up and HBO Max's have kept on going up, they would have gone up a lot higher if the two of them didn't exist. It's sort of like, you know, there's a reason why McDonald's and Burger King's usually are across the street from each other, because that's how they keep the prices low, because there's competition. You can pick one or the other. But if there was only one, like if they became McDonald's King or whatever, or Burger McDonald's, like then there's just the one option. They can charge you more because who else is going to undercut them? And this is just basic, you know, principles of you know, economics and business and capitalism, if you want to call it that. And that's what this lawsuit is about. They're seeking to block the acquisition. Now, of course, there's congressmen who are talking about the similar ideas that this will create a monopoly, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Of course, Paramount has also, you know, made their bid, even though it's, you know, this lawsuit is specifically against the Netflix Warner Brothers deal, because that's what's been signed. We know that potentially down the road, if Paramount deal goes through, people might still look to do something similar, because Paramount will also look to sell off some assets, or, like, you know, achieve, I think they set up to $6 billion in cost efficiencies. Now, according to the LA Times article where this was originally, this story is originally from, the name of the Max subscriber who's filed this lawsuit is Michelle Fendelander. So she or they have alleged, or she has alleged in a lawsuit that, which is in a U.S. district court in San Jose, that if Netflix's deal were to go through, it would decrease competition in the subscription streaming market. The lawsuit asked the court to issue an injunction to prevent the merger from happening. So essentially, they, you know, put a pause on it. And this is specifically what the lawsuit claims. In the court filing, it said American consumers, including SVOD purchasers like the plaintiff, aka Michelle Fendelander, will bear the brunt of this decreased competition, paying increased prices and receiving degraded and diminished services for their money. The elimination of this rivalry is likely to reduce overall content output, diminish the diversity and quality of available content, and narrow the spectrum of creative voices appearing on major streaming platforms. This is similar to, like, what a lot of people said about Netflix Disney buying, you know, Fox Studios, 21st Century Fox. And you know what? In large part, that panned out to be exactly that. They make less stuff now than they did back when Fox was its own company and Disney was its own company. So who's to say that won't happen again here? So I do see that there's some logic behind this, and obviously the concerns are valid, but Netflix hit out at the lawsuit saying, we believe this suit is meritless and is merely an attempt by the plaintiff's bar, aka their representation, to leverage all the attention on the deal. Aka they're saying this is just frivolous. They're trying to call attention to it. This is, you know, obviously this kind of thing will play against Netflix at a time when Paramount and Netflix are in a potential bidding war. So Netflix doesn't like this for that reason. We'll talk about whether, you know, if Paramount buys Warner Brothers, if that will be a monopoly. I don't think in that case it will be strictly a monopoly. I don't like the idea of the Ellisons having a direct say in CNN's editorial standards and whatnot, so that's something I am also concerned about, but we'll get into that later. What I wanted to do right now is kind of move on to the next part of the conversation, because that's where we are at right now, what we just went through. Like, in terms of what happens next, we got to talk about, like, where Netflix is. We're going to then talk about where currently Paramount is and what they're both looking to do, because they're the two parties that are now interested in making this happen. So let's start off with what Netflix has been up to lately. Now, we were talking about this earlier in the week, so I think that's a great place to set the stage. We know that when the deal was signed, immediately everybody was like, Netflix does not like making movies for theaters. So they're clearly gonna like take these movies out of theaters, and that means no more DC movies, no more Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter movies in theaters. And then we saw that Ted Sarandos was like, well, hold up, we are gonna keep putting movies in theaters. Despite the fact a lot of people are saying that this merger will collapse the theatrical market entirely because Netflix and Ted Sarandos, they're just, and even his co-CEO, they're just not fans of the theatrical business model. They think it's outdated. They think it's old school. It's not the way things happen anymore. People don't go to the movie theaters to watch their movies. They want to see it at home on Netflix, but preferably for them. Well, they seem to be changing the tune because Ted Sarandos is now trying to assuage those fears, according to this Deadline articles. And he was saying, and this was from the UBS conference that's happening this week, that look, we didn't buy this company to destroy that value. And I want to go through some specific quotes here because then we can kind of take a look at what he's saying, but then also like let's talk about what it means and do we believe him or not, right? So he was mentioning that in this transaction we pick up 3 businesses we are not currently in. AKA, he's talking about the studios, he's talking about, the distribution service. And of course the television production. That's Warner Brothers Television, Warner Brothers Pictures, DC Studios, all the studio elements, and then the theatrical distribution arm of the company, which Netflix doesn't have. So it makes sense that Netflix has not been doing a lot of theatrical distribution because they don't have a theatrical distribution arm of their own. So that's why they do limited releases. Like think about it from if you look at what he's saying here, we pick up 3 businesses we're not currently in, so we have no redundancies currently. One of them is a motion picture studio with a theatrical distribution machine. Well, it kind of makes sense, like if you think of it for a moment, because like Apple, because they didn't, even Apple does not and has not put in the effort and the money required to build up, the connections and the infrastructure to become its own theatrical distributor. Amazon MGM, well, one of the biggest reasons why Amazon bought MGM was because MGM has a theatrical distribution arm to their company and their studio, and Amazon is now using that to their benefit because before, like they had a certain presence, but it wasn't as big as it's going to be now. So there is something to be said for that, right? Because Warner Brothers has years of experience doing this. They know how it works. They know how to market a movie theatrically. They know they have the relationships are like in all the countries around the world, not just domestically but abroad as well. And Ted Sarandos was saying, we don't want to get rid of all of that. Like there's a reason why we're buying it, because we don't have it and we want it, basically. So he said, we're deeply committed to releasing those movies exactly the way they would release those movies today. Talking about how Warner Brothers releases movies theatrically, and the theatrical model is going to continue to stick around for the 102-year-old motion picture studios, one of the oldest out there. And then Ted Sarandos went on to say, all 3 of these new businesses we want to keep operating largely as they are. He added, specifying that the other 2, aside from the theatrical distribution with the studio, is Warner Brothers television production business and HBO. And you might be thinking, well, HBO, though, Netflix is a streaming service. So isn't HBO also? Well, HBO Max is a streaming service, but HBO in and of itself is like, home box office. It's premium prestige television. And while Netflix makes plenty of award-winning shows, HBO is still HBO. So what he's saying here is not only are we going to keep Warner Brothers Studios intact, movies, we're also going to keep the television production going, and they will still make stuff for other networks and stuff like they currently do, as well as for potentially Netflix like they currently do, and HBO Max. But we're also going to keep HBO like separate and its own thing. And he went on to say the theatrical business we talked about a lot in the past about wanting to do it because we've never been in that business. When this deal closes, we are in that business and we're going to do it. So if you go off of what he's saying here, what Ted Sarandos is saying, look, we're gonna be in the theatrical business now, like, and we take that like straight up seriously. That's not something like that we're looking at and trying to kill it. We're not buying Warner Brothers to kill them as a competitor. We're buying them because we don't have that infrastructure, we don't have that experience, we don't have those people working for us, and our way to do that is, rather than building it from the ground up, is to just go out there and buy it because we have the ability to do. And that's what they've done here. That's what Ted Sarandos is saying, and you take it, if you take his word, on as it is being said, if you take it at face value, then sure. I'm still a little skeptical You know, I'm definitely skeptical about it. I don't know if I could take it at face value. But he did say if we did this deal 24 months ago, all those movies we saw this year do so well for Warner Brothers, which remember Warner Brothers has made over $4 billion theatrically this year, which, by the way, is a big chunk of the entirety of the box office this year. They were, like, for the long time, like, the big highest grossing movie studio this year. Now Disney is going to take that lead because they've got Avatar, they've got Zootopia 2, and they've got, you know, a couple of big ones that have come out to end out the year. But Warner Brothers is one of the big two, like, this year, and they, you know, they have been for years. So he was saying, look, all these movies that came out this year and did so well for Warner Brothers would have been released in the same way in theaters if we did this deal 2 years ago. I'm talking about Minecraft, I'm talking about Superman, I'm talking about Weapons, I'm talking about Sinners, and he was saying, look, we're you know, even though we haven't been doing that in the past, we're buying Warner Brothers because we want to be in that theatrical business. And Ted Sarandos started off in the home video industry back in the day. That's how he ended up at Netflix. But I guess you could say that, you know, he's always wanted to maybe do it in some part of his mind, and maybe what he was saying about theatrical windows was, I don't know, like, just being jealous of the fact that he didn't have all of that. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to take that at face value. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think about that, because do you take it at face value? Yeah, the Superman was in theaters for only 35 days before it went digital, which isn't terribly long. It's already the theatrical windows are already pretty small. So I mean, M2G, as a shareholder, what do you think? If you are a shareholder of Warner Brothers Discovery, are you liking the Netflix deal, or are you gonna be somebody who's gonna try to sue to block it? Or are you gonna tender your shares to, of course, Paramount? But I do want to go in a different direction and talk about things for a moment here, right? Netflix, because they release movies in such a limited capacity for a few days for a lot of them, you know, they might release them in in 1,000 theaters, but they only play them for a couple of days before they put them on Netflix. So AMC, you know, Cinemark, Regal, a lot of the big theaters have stopped playing Netflix movies. Like K-Pop Demon Hunter was not playing at AMC this year, even though it made $19 million in a weekend, because they just don't want to put a movie in their theaters for just a weekend. They want movies to have that longer window. And that movie made like got over 325 million views on Netflix. It's one of their most watched ever. So it's, if not the most watched ever. So like, there's clearly potential there, but maybe now under the, you know, the new merger, they might change their tune, because obviously, think about it. There's another way to look at this, right? The Paramount decrees, if you are a film historian, you know what the Paramount decrees were. It doesn't have to do with the Paramount of today, but it's back in the day in the studio system. The Paramount decrees were like basically rules that were set in place by the government in the US to ensure that movie theaters were not owned by movie studios anymore. Because back in the studio system, that would happen, and they were vertically integrated so that the studio owned their own movie theaters, and then they would basically be able to block other movie studios to play movies in their theaters, and they would like put a bunch of their own movies in there, or they would make deals where they're playing like a bunch of terrible movies that are packed in with a couple of the good ones, kind of like, you know, cable bundles almost, like where you get a couple of the channels you really want to watch and then like 20 others that you don't care for, but they just pack them in. That's what used to happen at movie theaters. So the Paramount decrees made sure, because back in the day, movie theaters were even a bigger part of the economy, so it was more significant. They were saying, look, we can't let movie studios own movie theaters. And that's why for years, for decades, that's not been the case. But back, I believe in 2020, that was struck down. It was changed by the government authorities at the time. For whatever reason, the Department of Justice has taken this page down today. It was working earlier today, and now it's just not loading for me. But this, oh, there we go, this back. So the federal court terminated the Paramount consent decrees back in August of 2020. There were a lot of other laws like this, which they said were basically, you know, they decided that this just wasn't something that was relevant to the market today, saying without these restraints on the market, American ingenuity is again free to experiment with different business models that can benefit consumers. And we have seen since 2020 that, you know, Netflix has bought one of the old theater, the Egyptian Theater in LA. They bought the Paris Theater in New York. Sony has bought some theaters. They were, I think, talking about buying Alamo Drafthouse. I don't know if that went through or not. So technically, movie studios for the last 5 years have been able to buy movie theaters. And when you look at how much the biggest movie theaters chains are worth in terms of their value, and how much Netflix is paying for Warner Brothers Discovery right now. Like, if it was really about killing the theatrical market, Netflix could go buy AMC, Netflix could go buy Cinemark, Netflix could go buy Cineworld, which already went through bankruptcy in the last few years. They're already basically worthless. They could buy Cineplex, which is like the biggest theater chain in Canada. They could buy Marcus, which I believe they're one of the top 5, and even B&B. They're not even a public company. Now, guess what? Netflix's market capitalization, like aka what the company is worth, even after losing $100 billion in valuation over the past, few months since they entered into these talks to buy Warner Brothers, because their stockholders don't like this idea. Despite that, Netflix is still worth over $400 billion. All of those movie theater chains, AMC, Regal, which is part of Cineworld, you got then your Cineplex, I mentioned, Cinemark, Marcus Theaters, B&B Theaters, and of course, AMC is the biggest one of them all, but like all of them combined are worth like $20 billion. That's it. And Netflix is paying like 4 times as much, $82.7 billion for Warner Brothers. If it was simply about buying those theaters to kill the business, they could have done it. Like they probably would have gotten blocked because they wouldn't let them buy all of them. But like AMC almost went out of business recently. They might, be going bankrupt again in the not too distant future. Cineworld already went bankrupt once. Cinemark is actually doing relatively well, but they're not a terribly big company. They're only worth a couple of $1 billion, as is AMC. So Netflix could easily, chumps change, go buy these theaters. So if it was about killing the theaters, would they really be, spending this much money buying Warner Brothers, right? Obviously, they're buying it for the IP because they think it's going to help their catalog as well, so they can kill it more indirectly. And yeah, I mean, a lot of these theater companies have a lot of debt. Hey, Pacerland saying Campio brought up a great point. If Netflix wanted to really ruin theaters, they could have just bought AMC or Cinemark themselves. Yeah, that's the argument I'm making here too. Like, if you go off of that logic, then it makes sense. Like, I get it. Chicken Alfredo sounds amazing, Steven, by the way. So I hear you. I hear that logic. And yet at the same time, I still have reservations that Ted Sarandos is not being completely genuine in what he's saying, because you could indirectly kill the movie theaters a lot more easily than you would be able to if you wanted to go buy all of them. Because if you wanted to go buy AMC, it's one thing to buy the Egyptian Theater and the Paris Theater, which are like these 2 historical theaters, but it's another to buy AMC, which owns thousands of theaters, or Cinemark, or Cineworld, which owns Regal, or Cineplex. Like, they own a lot more. So if they wanted to go and spend a lot less money, a quarter of the money that they're spending on Warner Brothers, and buy all of them, the regulators will be like, okay, so there's clearly a monopoly here. Like, you are buying, all, if not all, maybe certainly a couple of the biggest, theater chains out there. You're going to have a monopoly on it. And all of a sudden you call the shots. Like, are you going to let Paramount movies in? What about, Disney movies? Do you not care for that? So, whereas here, they could just take another big player out of the picture. And this is now the counterpoint to what Ted Sarandos is saying. And if they do that, it's more indirect. You don't have, I mean, they could say, like, we are still putting movies in theaters. Don't blame us. What about Disney? What about Universal? What about Lionsgate? What about Sony? Like, there are all these other, Amazon Prime, MGM are putting movies in theaters. Apple, like, don't just blame us. Like, we're putting less, but like, that's because we're Netflix. We are a streaming service. So you could look at it that way. So yeah, I mean, look, Netflix Enterprising is saying will at least try to appease theaters, and the WB films do extremely well at the box office. He'll have to take that into account. Yeah, well, that's true, but like, also WB had a really good year this year. That doesn't mean next year will be amazing. Like, Warner Brothers had a really bad, rough time when Disney was just killing it before the pandemic, and things have seemingly flipped in the past year or two. But it's not, the grass isn't always green on the other side. So 2026 might be a bad year for Warner Brothers, right? Like, just because this year was great, they're still always going to be one of the biggest studios. So yes, Netflix, there's clearly a lot of apprehension around this. So it's a good question. Do we believe what Ted Sarandos is saying? Like, do we take his word, at face value, or are we looking at it and thinking, well, he might be saying that now, but they might change their tune a few years down the road because, well, what incentive do they have to keep putting movies in theaters if it doesn't help their streaming service catalog, right? Which, fair enough, but at the same time, I think there's an argument to be made. I think Netflix knows this, that if a movie makes $1 billion at the box office, then you put it on streaming, a lot of people will come watch it on streaming too, and it will potentially have a bigger launch. We have seen that happen with something like a Top Gun Maverick. It had a huge launch on Paramount Plus after it made $1.5 billion at the box office. So there's always, I think that could be a good way to go about it. It's just a matter of if Netflix will go there and keep doing that. Yeah, so MTG saying I still have reservations too. It just doesn't make sense to turn down $2 billion per year in theatrical licensing profit alone, and the theatrical releases leads to advertising and merch and licensing. Yes, and that's something where Netflix still struggles. And these are a lot of things that, again, Warner Brothers has infrastructure for, Netflix doesn't quite have. So that probably means they'll keep those people around. Paramount has redundancies there. They don't want to keep two teams that do the same thing. So those are some areas where Paramount will probably cut a few more jobs. I mean, they might cut fewer jobs elsewhere, but so ultimately, I don't know how the job cuts will end up, but you could tell in either situation there will be people losing their jobs because there'll be redundancies. But I do see your point. Warner Brothers box office has been amazing this year, and of the $4 billion that they made, over $2 billion of that is in profit for Warner Brothers. Does Netflix really want to just give that up? So yeah, that would be something interesting to consider if Netflix ends up, ultimately winning this bidding war. But let's talk about the pairings, shall we? Since we are giving Netflix all this attention, let's give Paramount some attention, because they've also been making moves. Of course, they kicked off the week with a hostile takeover offer that's going directly to the shareholders after the board decided to go with the Netflix offer. And they have been saying that basically, by the way, Enterprising, I mean, it's not a matter of dumb enough to buy WB just to screw over theaters. It's more a matter of business philosophy, right? So where they see value long term. But anyway, talking about Paramount, they kicked off the week, David Ellison did, with this hostile takeover offer going directly to the shareholders, because the board of Warner Brothers chose Netflix last week, and they have kept on saying, and David Ellison and company, that look, the process was rigged in favor of Netflix. They didn't give us a lot of feedback in our bids, despite the fact that we addressed, they did give us. And throughout that whole process, we felt like we just weren't given a fair shake. And ultimately, our offer is actually a better offer, is the argument they're making. And yet Netflix was the one that was chosen at the end. So we feel like we want another shot at this whole situation. And well, today, in light of that hostile takeover offer that they submitted on Monday, David Ellison sent a letter directly to Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders making the case for why its bid is better than Netflix's deal, saying, "I am passionate and dedicated to this pursuit." Now, Variety actually has the whole letter here, so I'm going to go through this. Hello, Monique. How are you doing? We did a lot of DC stuff earlier. We're going to talk a little more DC later, so thanks for joining in. Hit the like button. Now, of course, I'm going to read some of this aloud, and then we'll go through it and talk about it. So he basically, this is again David Ellison writing a letter directly to the shareholders of Warner Brothers, telling them and making the case for his deal, for the Paramount deal, being better than the Netflix deal. He said in the letter, "We funded, founded, and then merged Skydance with Paramount, and know the sacrifices and investment it takes to capitalize and grow a media business. I am passionate and dedicated to this pursuit, committed to and putting my own money in, and that is why I'm writing to you today." So he's clearly saying here, look, I'm not in this just because, I wanted to have a shot at it and I was having fun. I know what it takes to make this work, not just in the here and the now, but what it's going to mean, once the deal is done, if you go with my deal. So he's trying to make that case, we're not just here messing about, we're serious about this stuff. Now, one of the key things here that Ellison pointed out in his letter, which I was talking about yesterday, but it's worth mentioning again. One of the key points of contention throughout this whole bidding war is going to be, and has been so far, that Paramount claims a Netflix deal with Warner Brothers Discovery undervalues Warner Brothers TV networks. So it's a situation where you can, the way Paramount looks at this and the way they estimate it, the Warner Brothers Discovery Networks Group, which the company will spin off as Discovery Global next year, before they merge with Netflix, if the deal that's currently been signed will be ultimately consummated. In that deal with Netflix, the Paramount estimates that Warner Brothers Network Group has a value of $1 per share when it ultimately becomes its own company, whereas the Warner Brothers Discovery board rejected the Paramount offer for $30 a share for Warner Brothers Discovery for the entire company. That they implied that, look, the value of the global networks business is at would be $2.25 a share, meaning $1.25 higher. So the David Ellison was making the point here that, look, we think that Warner Brothers Discovery Networks are actually going to be worth $1 per share once they've become their own company, and even then we're paying $2.25 per share with $30 total package. The $30 per share for the whole company. Of that, they're thinking $2.25 is for the cable networks, whereas they think this is actually worth $1. So they're like, we're paying up for that. Whereas Netflix's deal does not include it. They're like, we're paying $27.25 or 75 cents. And then of that money, none of that is for the networks. You get rid of the networks. That's completely up to you and what you do about it. And then after you do that, whatever comes of it, whatever amount of money that's actually worth once it goes on the market, that's nothing to do with Netflix. That's all. That entire risk is being put on Warner Brothers Discovery to do that. And Paramount is saying, look, we're willing to give you $2.25 for that right now as part of the deal, as part of the $30. So that's more of a sure thing. And we think it's actually a lot more than what it will actually be worth next year if you do spin it off. Whereas Netflix is like, Warner Brothers can take on that risk, figure that out, and then after that, we will ultimately come in with the money that we are paying for the rest of what will be left over, which are the studios, and all the streaming stuff. Now, the other thing that was a big problem for Warner Brothers Discovery was the idea that there's a Saudi Arabian, Qatari, and Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth funds were backing around $24.9 billion of the deal, like that one Paramount has put up, the money they'll be putting up. $25 billion roughly of the $108 billion that it's valued at would be coming from foreign wealth funds, the sovereign wealth funds. Well, there's a security concern around that, and we have had several representatives, Democratic, and we've had one Republican representative from the House talk about, like, look, there's serious national security concerns over the Paramount Skydance hostile takeover bid, because if you go with them, we're worried about Saudi Arabian, Qatari, and Abu Dhabi, influence on an American media business. I don't think ultimately this is going to matter too much, because Paramount has ensured and assured, saying like they have waived their governance rights. So the lawmakers are saying maybe they could be still, even if they're not officially having any influence, they could still be some implied influence. It's sort of like, we are investors, and therefore, they don't need to have official, board directors on the board that represent them, but they could still have an influence simply because they own a certain chunk of what will be the new company, Paramount, Warner Brothers. So they're saying we need to get that looked at by the CFI-US, which is the government body that looks at, any foreign investment in U.S. companies. So I think ultimately this is based on what's on offer. This is unlikely to play a big role, because the amount of money, the percentage of the whole valuation of the company that would be Paramount, Warner Brothers, that would belong to these sovereign wealth funds with the $25 billion they're investing. They will have a smaller chunk than what triggers the threshold for those kind of reviews. So I don't think ultimately this is going to matter so much. This is it's I'm not saying it's saber rattling by lawmakers. I'm just saying it's unlikely to pass muster in a lawsuit, which could ultimately be what the Department of Justice does to try to block one of these deals, whether it's the Paramount deal or the Netflix deal. They did that for when AT&T was buying Warner Brothers, or Discover Warner Brothers back at the time, Time Warner. Of course, that ultimately went through. But yeah, so if that happens, I don't think those reasons will hold up. But that's based on the offers that are on the table right now. Now, then, in this whole letter, this actual letter, David Ellison actually kind of laid out a few pieces. So I'm going to kind of go through all of these. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to go through some of them. Hello, Watcher, by the way. I'm going to go through a few of things, and we'll talk about them and what they mean, because he does kind of go into the timeline of how we got here, essentially, and there's some significant things that we can get into. The Watcher saying Netflix would end the comics and gaming division, Paramount will not. Well, no, I don't think Netflix will. Netflix wants to keep them around because Warner Brothers games is a lot more valuable than anything Netflix has done for their gaming stuff. Comics, that might be something that goes the way of the dodo. That would be something I would be concerned about. I think we all want to see if Warner Brothers can stay independent because that's probably the best, result for competition for us as consumers. But it doesn't look like that. That's probably the least likely outcome of this. So I don't really know if that's going to end up happening. So I guess we'll have to just hope for the lesser of two evils with Paramount or Netflix at this point. But yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying they will end the comics. I'm just saying there's a I can see that being more likely than ending the games division. The games division still makes billions of dollars, so I don't think that will happen. But okay, so in this letter that David Ellison sent, he mentioned some very specific things, and he's talking about like all the reasons why the Paramount offer is superior to the Netflix offer, and he kind of breaks them down, right? Because this is for the shareholders. So if you own shares of Warner Brothers Discovery, then this is addressed to you. Like some of you guys might be. I think I have a few shares that I have some shareholdings in Warner Brothers Discovery. So I guess I should pay attention to this as well, which I have obviously. But anyway, so Netflix's cash component, Ellison was saying, is $18 billion less roughly than Paramount's in the aggregate, meaning that basically roughly $7 per share less than what Netflix is paying, saying Paramount is paying a lot more money. So just on the pure cash, if you're saying cash is king, which Paramount Discovery did, Warner Brothers Discovery did tell the Paramount folks during this bidding process that cash is king, then Paramount is paying a lot more of it than what Netflix is. Obviously, Paramount is buying the whole company. Netflix is not buying the whole company. They're just buying the studios and streaming and not the cable networks. So you could say there's a difference there. But, the cable networks they're not going to be worth $7 a share. So, even then, I think Paramount is saying their deal is just superior financially. And because it's cash up front, there's less uncertainty. So, and this is one of the reasons why I was trying to point this out yesterday. It's a little hard to understand if you're not familiar with like how the stock market works. But basically, the Netflix stock price, David Ellison was saying, closed at $96.71 on Tuesday, and as of this writing, is trading at $93.81. Now, I don't know what it closed at today. It probably went up a little bit. But yesterday, yeah, it was definitely at $96 and some change when I last looked. And I do think it dropped a little bit earlier today. It might have stabilized a little bit. It fluctuates throughout the day. But it's still significant because that stock price now is sitting at roughly $4 below the low end of the collar on its stock consideration. What that basically is, in the deal, Netflix is paying $4.50 in stock, in Netflix stock. So for every Warner Brothers Discovery stock that you own, you will get that exchange for $4.50 worth of Netflix stock when this deal goes through. But that's predicated on the idea that value is predicated on there's a range, what they call the collar price of the Netflix stock. I think the range was 96. It was $97 and some change on the low end, and $119 and some change on the high end. And clearly, the $97 and some change, the Netflix price has now dropped below that. So what they're saying here, what David Ellison and Paramount are pointing out, is that Netflix, the total value of what Netflix has offered and signed on for with Warner Brothers is actually now worth less because their stock price has been going down, and it's continuing to go down. In fact, they've lost over like $110 billion in value since a few months ago when this whole thing started. So that might mean that Netflix just needs to up their offer eventually, simply to make up for the less valuable stock, because otherwise, the Warner Brothers Discovery is not getting as good of a deal out of it, and that's simply because they're paying partly in stock and not all in cash, whereas Paramount is doing that. With that in mind, and they're also saying here, look, part of this is all the regulatory approval and the speed of all of this happening, and the Paramount deal, they can start working on getting that done as soon as they've signed on the dotted line. Netflix is not going to start doing a lot of that work until Discovery Global is spun off next year, by the latter half of next year. And they're saying that exposes the stock price to multiple quarterly reports. We have talked about it on the show before. If a company has a new quarterly earnings report and they underperform their expectations, the price goes down, right? And then maybe the next quarter they do better, the price will go up. But that's a lot of like uncertainty, and as a shareholder, you're like, oh, okay, I'm riding the roller coaster here. How much money do I have today? A lot less than I did 3 months ago, maybe a lot more than I had 3 months ago. And it could be an up and down thing, and you know, Wall Street does not like that, right? They want their money, right? Everybody wants it. It's all about greed, right? So I mean, naturally, like that's for everybody. Like, who doesn't want more money? So what they're saying here is by Paramount paying all cash up front, you don't need to worry about what the stock price is going to be for Netflix or for Warner Brothers like this time next year. It's when this all starts to go down for the Netflix deal. It will be all done with, and we would have paid you $30 per share, which is more than what Warner Brothers is worth. So they're getting a premium anyway. You're going to cash out with a profit from what you probably paid for your shares of Warner Brothers. So our deal is better because Netflix has a lot of uncertainty attached to it. And they also mentioned that buried in the 8K filing on Friday, that the deal that Netflix made with Warner Brothers, there was a mechanism providing a dollar-for-dollar reduction in the purchase price if more debt gets allocated to streaming and studios because of an unspecified cap on global networks. While the limit is undisclosed, every $1 billion above it could represent a reduction of 40 cents per share. I'm going to TLDR this for you guys. Here's what this means. As part of the Netflix deal, they're going to sit back and not go through the merger until Warner Brothers has spun off the global network side of things. And in doing so, Warner Brothers has an unspecified cap on the amount of the debt. Because remember, Warner Brothers Discovery still has around $30 or so billion in debt that they're carrying from the deal when they bought it from AT&T. They can put as much of that debt on streaming and studio on the global networks company as they want. That new company that's going to be just like TNT, TBS, and the TV networks. But that's going to mean like they're going to get new loans for that, right? Because right now the loans that they have that they're paying off are for the current company. Once it becomes two companies, they will have to get different loans. And depending on what kind of loans they go with and what, let's say they're technically approved for or whatever, they might be able to put more than they expect debt on the global networks or less. If they put less, then the amount they put less on global networks, that amount then will stick with the main company that Netflix would be buying. And if Netflix is buying a more indebted version of Warner Brothers than they are currently expecting to, then on a dollar for dollar, level, the total amount of money that Netflix will end up paying for Warner Brothers will go down. And that's not something we can determine right now because that will ultimately happen next year when Warner Brothers Discovery goes through this whole process. So what they're saying is that's another reason why, like, do you really want to be as a shareholder involved in all that? Because you can make out like bonkers if it works out in your favor, but what if it doesn't? What if Warner Brothers has to keep more of the debt than that they agreed to? I think they agreed to like roughly if you look at the numbers, around $15 billion in net debt that Warner Brothers will end up keeping. And so the rest of it, which might be like up to 20 or so billion dollars, will go with global networks. But they might not be able to put up as much there, right? It's kind of like global networks might not be as credit worthy and therefore might not, I'm simplifying this, might not be able to take on as much debt as they expect to be able to put on that new company. And so Warner Brothers might need to keep more of that. And because if Netflix is going to take on more of that debt, and they're saying for every extra $1 billion of debt that Warner Brothers comes with after splitting off with Discovery Global than what they agreed to right now, which is, like I said, around $15 billion, for every extra $1 billion that Warner Brothers ends up with, there will be a 40-cent reduction per share in the overall deal that Netflix paid. So they paid 27.75. That's what they've agreed to. So if they go from 15 to 16 billion in debt when Netflix starts to close with the deal with Warner Brothers next year, then that number from 27.75 goes down to 27.35, and then down to 26.95. And, that has a big effect on the overall number too. That means all of a sudden you're talking about less than $80 billion, maybe closer to $70 billion. And Paramount is saying, we're just giving you $30 per share right now. You don't have to worry about any of that. Just take it and, go. Like it's literally all right there. So again, they're making all these arguments, which some of them are valid arguments because this could go, against Warner Brothers, like all this stuff. It's hard to predict, how things will play out when they decide to spin off all their TV networks next year. And one of the other things that they were mentioning mentioning here, they've kept on saying this. They believe that because the global networks, the Discovery Global, which will ultimately be the name of the new company that will have all the TV networks Warner Brothers currently owns, they will be a lot more leveraged, as in they will have a lot more debt than the comparison that they keep making with Versant, the NBC Universal spinoff with all their networks. And they're saying here, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because there's just a lot to talk about. They're saying Versant has a lot more sports. They have, the Olympics rights. They have Premier League. They have a lot more news like MS Now, CNBC. They've got all of that stuff, whereas they've also got Fandango and golf now. They've got a lot more digital properties that are very profitable. Warner Brothers Discovery's networks are not as high value. Like news and sports is where it's at. And Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't have NBA rights anymore. They just have some college sports rights. They don't have NHL rights. Well, they have an NHL rights package, but it's like the smaller package of the ones that like ESPN has a bigger version of the package. So they're saying that, from a news standpoint, aside from CNN, Warner Brothers Discovery networks aren't as valuable and they'll have more debt. Therefore, they will likely be valued at a lot less money than Versant will be in the stock market. So in the Netflix deal, Warner Brothers shareholders assume 100% of the risk of whatever the value is on the stock market for global networks, because they will end up having to kind of shoulder that because they'll get shares in the new company when this happens. And if it's trading for $1, they probably lost out on a lot of value, because Paramount right now is saying we're paying $2.25 per share of the hypothetical global networks company. So they're saying our deal is superior because, again, we're giving you an all cash offer that's very certain, whereas with what might happen next year, who knows, it might end up playing in favor of Warner Brothers, it might not. And they're making the case that while Versant has a lot more going for it because they've got golf, they've got the Premier League, they've got the Olympics, what does Warner Brothers Discovery Networks have when they become their own company? They have CNN. They have Bleacher Report, but it's not nearly as valuable as, because they say the lifestyle content, like, all the stuff that they have with True TV and the other net, like HGTV Food Network, it's not as valuable as news and sports, which they're right about. So again, another reason why Paramount is saying their offer is superior. Not to mention, they also said that one of the big things that Warner Bros. Discovery had told them was, look, cash is king, and we want to make sure that you, the Ellisons, are backing up the offer, backing up the equity, the money that any of the foreign investors are putting up, so that if the foreign investors back out, you are backing up that money, and the Ellisons will pay us that money. So we don't want to end up in a situation where we'll have any problems. And they did that. Like Paramount did that. So they do have that in place. So they're saying, look, we are good for the money that we've got. Like, we are good for it. We're not going to just, all of a sudden get up and walk away from this. So we are a safe bet. They're also saying, look, while we had to commit to this idea that there will be a material adverse change condition tied to Paramount, aka if this going through regulatory, process, if the government decides that you need to divest CNN, for example, or maybe CBS News and CNN or something, basically, if Paramount has to do anything that will have an actual negative effect on their current business, there's basically one of the Discovery forced Paramount to say, you're going to be willing to do that to make this happen, yet you won't walk away, that you will go through and do whatever you need to do, even if it hurts your current business, to make this deal happen. Whereas they apparently, like, they did not ask Netflix to do the same thing, because in Netflix's deal, which is all public knowledge, it's all in the SEC, David Ellison was saying that Netflix was not. Netflix was given the freedom to say, look, Netflix will do only what it can to get this all approved, but Netflix will not do anything to hurt their current business to make this deal happen. They will walk away before that happens, but Paramount will. And so they're saying, why the higher standard for us? Why the double standard? Which I also understand. Like, I get it. Like, why make Paramount do that? I think the reason why, if you're really looking at it and thinking about it, Paramount, Skydance, as they're known currently, has only been around for about a couple of months, like this current entity. They're very young. There's a lot of uncertainty about what they are, what they're capable of. Hi, Emo Nerd Girl. If you already have HBO Max right now, to answer your question, it's not going away. So HBO Max will be there and will not be going away anytime soon, regardless of who ends up buying Warner Brothers. So you're safe for now. That might change in the future, but as of right now, at least for the next few months, if not maybe beyond that even, you'll be okay. But as I was talking about it, yeah, like there's a bit of a double standard here in terms of there's a higher bar Paramount had to clear because it looks like they're the younger company. Netflix is a very valuable company that Wall Street loves. So they're probably thinking like Netflix doesn't need to have that same high bar because Netflix has higher market capitalization. They're worth like $400 billion. They were worth $500 billion a few months ago. So they don't need to make that sacrifice because we know they're good for it. Like, so that's just they're saying, look, basically the credit worthiness of Paramount is what they're questioning, not of like the Ellisons and what the money that they have. We know the Ellisons have money. It's more about Paramount and its ability to run a business, to run a studio and everything that Paramount has. Because Netflix has a longer track record than the current Paramount Skydance company. Not Paramount like the core company, the company that's the studio that's been around for over 100 years. I'm talking about the Paramount Skydance, the company that formed when the merger happened a few months ago. That's probably why they're doing this. Like that's why they wanted that material adverse change condition for Paramount, but not for Netflix, to address what David Allison was saying. But it is, fair. There's a double standard there. But Warner Brothers, it looks like, might have reasoning behind it. The other thing they were saying, and I think this is very interesting, right? Because we were talking about like monopolies. This is the part I think is easier to digest. And this is where David Ellison was making a case that I think is worth talking through. He was saying that with the Warner Brothers Discovery transaction with Netflix appears to be in for a long, bumpy ride as it navigates the global regulatory review process. He was basically saying, look, we have already started the process, both in the United States and in Europe, and we have already made some pre-notification filings. Like basically, they've already done some paperwork to initiate what would be needed for regulatory approvals if Warner Brothers ends up choosing the Paramount offer. Whereas they're saying, look, Netflix hasn't started doing that. They're accusing Netflix of because Netflix doesn't need to. As part of their deal, they don't need to do that until next year when the global networks are spun off. So they're saying here, Paramount, that Netflix might have a long and bumpy road as it navigates this regulatory process because they are the number one streaming service globally. The number one streaming business globally. By subscriber count, they are number one. They have over 300 million subscribers. HBO Max is number 4. I believe number 2 is Disney. Number 3 is Amazon Prime. And based on these metrics. And then David Ellison was saying in his letter, combining these two yields an overwhelming market share of 43%. Which is beyond that 30% range, at which point regulators usually get involved and say, whoa. If you have more than 30% market share, you might just be a monopoly. 43% is more than 30%, right? And not only that, but 43% would be more than twice as much of the market share as number 2. Basically Disney has around 20 some odd percentage of the market share. And they're saying that 43% number with HBO Max and Netflix together will be more than twice as much as Disney in number 2. And that's in addition to other competition concerns, because they're saying, look, Warner Brothers Film and TV Studios vertically integrating into Netflix means that, Netflix will have a lot more leverage over theatrical exhibitors and creative talent. I mentioned this yesterday, that basically Netflix, once they have integrated Warner Brothers Film and TV Studios into Netflix, they might still exist as their own entities under Netflix, but Netflix will still own them. Therefore, they will be able to have more leverage over people who want to work with Netflix, because all of a sudden they control a lot more content, a lot more movies, a lot more of the iconic franchises. And they're saying, look, who else are you going to go to? Disney? Sure, go ahead. But like, if you want to work for DC, if you want to work on a Lord of the Rings movie, if you want to work with Netflix, if you want to work with Warner Brothers, it's us. And so, they'll have a lot of, power in those conversations. And they can also, have a lot of leverage over theaters, because they can be like, look, take it or leave it. We're Netflix. We own basically half of the market. What are you going to do? Like, go to Disney? Like Disney, and we know when a company has this much power that they will abuse it, because Disney had been abusing it through the 2010s when they were like the kings of the box office with Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar. I just remember from having worked at a traditional 70mm IMAX theater and there's common story that you would hear from a lot of exhibitors, that Disney would use this power and abuse it to make sure that their movies were getting the prime theatrical windows, that they were playing the most, were getting the best screens, all the premium formats, and getting more time in them over other studios. I worked at a 70mm IMAX theater that no longer exists. Like they tore it down and replaced it with like your cheaper digital IMAX. But at the time, the only way they would play Star Wars, what is it, the second one, The Last Jedi, Star Wars The Last Jedi, the second of the sequel trilogies, the only way Disney would agree to play that movie is if that theater, which had this one IMAX 70mm screen, would play the movie 3 times a day, 7 days a week, or 5 days a week, and then it played it like 2 times a day on like 2 of the other days. It was like some kind of like weird thing where it basically meant that they would be playing Star Wars pretty much almost like half or most of the day, 7 days a week. And that's the only way they could play Star Wars The Last Jedi, because they were like, it's either that or nothing. Like, you don't get the movie. And obviously they wanted Star Wars The Last Jedi because it was one of the biggest movies of the year. So we know Disney has been known to abuse their market power. So who's to say that Netflix won't do the same when they have Warner Brothers Discovery, or Warner Brothers under their belt? And that's what Paramount is saying. But you can also make the argument why Paramount could do this very same thing. If they're going to be putting out 30 movies a year between Paramount and Warner Brothers, that wouldn't they have an outsized, dominance in the market? So, well, I mean, they won't have as big of a chunk of the market as Netflix would, but I mean, theatrically speaking, is completely different. Theatrically, Netflix does not have a presence. So Netflix, technically in the theatrical market, Netflix's dominance would be less, because it will basically be whatever Warner Brothers has now is what Netflix will have, because Netflix doesn't have anything to add to it, right? Paramount does. So I think in this case, it's actually works against Paramount. But as far as streaming goes, that's where Netflix obviously has a huge advantage. But the other thing they were saying, one of the other metrics they used in this was like, look at the value. This is, again, the chart from Paramount saying, hey, look at the value of Netflix compared to all these other studios, right? Just look at this. This is actually mind-blowing if you look at it for a moment. This is a slide from the letter that Davis Ellison sent. And in it, he was highlighting that the Netflix's equity market capitalization, aka according to Wall Street, what is Netflix worth in pure dollar amount? They're worth, even after having lost $110 billion in company value over the last few months, while this bidding war has been happening, Netflix is still worth over $30 billion more than the value of Disney, Comcast, Fox, Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount Skydance, Lionsgate, Cinemark, IMAX, AMC Networks, AMC, like the movie theaters, AMC, and Stars. Like, all of those companies combined are worth $382 billion. Netflix alone is still having, after, lost $110 billion in value, still worth $418 billion. And they were worth even more. They were worth $528 billion like a few months ago. That's huge. They're saying, look, Netflix is already basically a monopoly. So this is only going to further make them more of a monopoly. So, I mean, I understand where they're coming from, right? Like, because it's going to be hard to make that. So they're saying this is why Netflix will have a harder time getting their deal approved, because they're already in a monopoly. I mean, and they're also saying, and I think one of the other things here is they're addressing in this letter, and this is Paramount doing this, by the way. So again, this is from Paramount's perspective. They're saying, look, abroad, not only is it a big deal in the United States, internationally, Netflix has an even bigger market share. They have like basically 51% of the European streaming market, the subscription revenue streaming market. So they have an even more outsized presence internationally. Like, Disney only has a 10% of the market in Europe. And so adding HBO Max to Netflix has an even bigger effect in making them a monopoly in the streaming world internationally, which would likely will make it even harder to make this deal go through. They might actually could force Netflix to let HBO Max go or completely shut it down or whatever. And that's what Paramount is saying. And then they're also saying, to address the idea that Netflix wants to pretend, or Netflix is contending, Netflix has said, look, we aren't a monopoly because YouTube is bigger than us. More people watch YouTube than they watch Netflix overall, and so they're defining their market, like their market definition for what would make them a monopoly or not a monopoly according to Netflix. They're saying, look, we are in the same market as YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And then Paramount is saying, hold up, what the hell is that supposed to mean? No, that's not how it works. Netflix, you are a SVOD company, a streaming video on demand, a streaming service primarily, aka people pay to watch your streaming service. Paramount Plus is the same. Disney Plus is the same. The HBO Max is the same. YouTube is not the same thing. YouTube is more so user generated content, like what we are watching right now. User generated content, and it's social media like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You can't put yourself in the same conversation. That's a very broad definition according to Paramount. They're saying if a regulator ever accepted such a broad definition of a market, then they might as well just stop enforcing anything in media, because then everything is, it's sort of like if everybody is super, then no one is, like from the first Incredibles. That's basically what they're saying. And then they continue to emphasize that, look, there will be a much longer period of time for this deal to happen with Netflix, and in that period of time a lot could change, and it could work against Warner Brothers in terms of the value they'll get from the deal. So take our deal up front, it's more certain. And look, if anything happens at the end of the day, we are both going to be paying $5 billion at the minimum. I think Paramount will pay $5 billion to terminate the deal if they have to walk away from it. Netflix will pay $5.8 billion. And they're saying that extra $800 million is not going to be enough to close the gap of uncertainty of what all the things that can happen between now and when the global networks are spun off. They're also saying here that, look, people who are worried, because shareholders were worried, you're going to be getting $6 billion in cost cuts and synergies, cost efficiencies, and Netflix has said they will make $3 billion in cost efficiencies because there's less overlap between the two companies. Well, David Ellison was saying, look, that doesn't mean we're going to be letting a lot more people go. We're not going to be firing a lot more people. There are a lot of those, efficiencies are going to be happening in the technology department, in linear networks optimization, which still means they're going to be letting people go. It still does. But, but they're also saying real estate rationalization. That right here is the first time we have seen anybody address the idea, or at least Paramount address the idea. They might be looking to sell off some of the studio backlot. Maybe not the whole thing, maybe part of it. Or maybe they sell off one of the studio backlots, even though they've said, look, we're going to keep Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery running as their two separate studios. But 21st Century Fox, when they got bought by Disney, 20th Century Studios now has moved to the Disney lot. They don't work off the Fox lot anymore. Fox still has that. But Disney was like, we don't need to own two different studio backlots. We just have our own. We'll just use that. Just come in, you can have offices on ours. So the people who work for 20th Century Studios now, they work in the Disney lot. So this to me means that it's more likely that Paramount ends up either selling off part or the entirety of the Warner Brothers lot. And so that's something I wouldn't want, because it's one of those historic backlots that I would like to have stick around. Hey, Jenna Ortega, 22, saying, to me, I think she looks cool. Do you like this? Don't care the haters call her girl boss, this and that. I wasn't talking about Jenna Ortega, but I'm sure somebody in the chat was. Jenna Ortega is a great actor. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. I don't know why the chat went there, but anyway, talking about this is interesting, right? Also Paramount saying they will be putting out 30 movies a year. They're not going to cut down on the number of movies that Warner Brothers will make. Netflix obviously has been trying to do the same thing. So there's all of that. Then ultimately, they're saying, look, we just have a better deal in place. And throughout this whole process, we weren't given the fair shake. And while we were trying to address all the concerns that Warner Brothers, did give us early on, they ultimately stopped answering our messages. They didn't even give us feedback on our last offer. And then we told them this is not our final offer. And yet they were like, they just didn't get back to them. And then the last time they heard from Warner Brothers advisors, they told them, look, isn't cash always king? When they were trying to figure out, and Paramount was trying to figure out, do we need to put up an offer that's all cash, or can we do some stock? And basically they were told, indirectly, do cash. And they did that. And they paid they said that, look, we're paying more than what Netflix did, and Netflix had a part of their offer was stock, which again is probably because Netflix stock is valued a lot more and it's more of a safer bet today. So that's why, you know, Warner Brothers was open to the idea for Netflix, but they weren't open to that same idea with Paramount. But ultimately, David, we are good for the money. We have the money. Like, the Ellisons are backing up this deal. This whole thing, we're not going to walk away from it. We're not scam artists. We have done this before. We just did it with Skydance buying Paramount. So we are good for it. And so if there's any accusations that, you know, we are not going to be able to like put the money up, the Ellison trust is backing up all the money that's coming from foreign investors. So if they back out, the Ellisons will pay that money. It's guaranteed. And yeah, ultimately these are all the arguments that they're making here, you know, and they're saying, look, the shareholders now have the power to make the decision and choose the right path, because it just seems like, according to Paramount, that, you know, the board of Warner Brothers made the wrong choice, and a choice where they're going to end up getting less money overall than if they go with the Paramount offer. So what it means ultimately is this: the shareholders now have until January 8th to tender their offer, to tender their stock that they own in Warner Brothers to Paramount, and then Paramount can choose to accept those tenders. And if they do, they will only do this if they get a majority of them. So if they get the majority of the stock, then they will go through and accept it. And at that point, if you have stock that you tendered and sold to Paramount, you would get money for that, $30 per share. And now you walk away with the money, and then Paramount owns the majority of Warner Brothers, and then they will force the hostile takeover by replacing the board at Warner Brothers. But if they don't, if they don't get that in time by January 8th, they can extend that deadline. Or, you know, they can walk away, or they, you know, or they could raise their, offer. All of that can still happen. I think what's going to happen coming up, if you guys want my opinion on this, and again, this is my opinion based on the information that's out there, despite all the warnings from like the lawmakers and despite all the uproar from the unions and stuff, this bidding war is going to keep going on. And what's likely going to happen moving forward is that Paramount will likely raise their offer a little bit more, because their deal right now is, while it is technically more money, it's not that much more than the Netflix money. So while it is technically superior, I don't think it's enough to convince a majority of the shareholders of Warner Brothers to change their, to change over from the Netflix deal and vote for the Paramount ones, instead. So if they do that, which David Zaslav has said is open to the idea, then Netflix will likely go ahead and raise their price. Remember when Comcast came in and tried to buy Fox from right under Disney's noses, and then Disney had to raise their number and ultimately went from paying $52 billion to $71 billion. So there's room to grow here. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to go up by $18 billion in total. I mean, it could, but whereas Paramount is currently offering $30 a share, they could go up to like 35. They could. They have the money. The Ellisons do. Netflix probably does too. They can probably go up too. Probably not to the 35, but they can raise it from $27.75 to, let's say, $32 per share. And if they do that, then, there's still, this will keep on going until one company walks away. But to finish this off, there is one other caveat. David Zaslav might, even though he managed to do a great job of starting a bidding war, so from a standpoint of like making money for your company, he's done great, because all Paramount and Netflix are probably going to overpay for Warner Brothers Discovery, and Warner Brothers Discovery is going to make out like, whoever owns stock in the company, which includes David Zaslav, he could walk away with at least $500 million, if not way more, depending on what the ultimate, deal, what the ultimate value of the final deal is. He could walk away with $1 billion, maybe even, depending on how far this goes. So he's gonna have a lot of money, and then he's done a great job of setting this up so that Warner Bros. Discovery gets a lot of money. Like, they were trading at $8, per share like a year ago. Now they're trading for almost 30. That's a big difference. That's billions of dollars in value created. So he's done a good job there. But he's not loved by Hollywood. And he's still a bit of an outsider, even though he loves the glamour. And I know that initially in the whole bidding process, there was this idea that he wanted a role in the new company, whether it was with Netflix or Paramount. And Netflix, hadn't really made any public promises, but there were reports that Paramount had offered in one of their previous deals a co-CEO job to David Zaslav in the post-merger deal with Paramount. Well, if given how things have gone down and David Allison isn't so happy about the fact that David Zaslav's literally stopped responding to his text messages and stopped answering his phone calls, did David Zaslav overplay his hand? Because if ultimately the hostile takeover happens and Paramount wins, will this still want to work with David Zaslav? Or does he just ultimately end up getting a buyout and now he's got to figure out whatever he's doing? He's not going to have the job that he was probably looking for. And what about Netflix? Will they want to keep him around? Because from a Netflix perspective, you think about this, they signed a deal. But if all of a sudden, like, you know, David Zaslav is like, oh, well, Paramount is offering us more money. So what do you say, Netflix? Like, they've given us enough money that we can just pay you the 5.8 billion, the 2.8 billion that they will need to pay to terminate the deal with you guys, and then we can go with Paramount. And if that happens, then Paramount is like, oh, you know, sure, we'll pay more now, but don't expect us to be giving you, you know, a corner office with a sweet job and all the benefits after, because you just, you know, took us for a ride and now we're paying billions and more dollars for all of this. So think about that for a moment. I mean, David Zaslav will still end up with a lot of money, but he might not have like the cushy job in the future, you know, as an executive in one of these companies. And that leads me to believe that there might, because if David Zaslav is no longer around post merger, whether it's with Paramount or Netflix, think about this. He is the one who put Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca in place and gave him contract extensions. He's the one who put Peter Safran and James Gunn at place at DC Studios. He created DC Studios and gave them an extension. Now they're going to be around until 2027. All of that is great, you know, but that's that's David Zaslav's team. He put them there. But if David Zaslav is no longer around in the future of Warner Brothers, once it's under Netflix or Paramount, will those companies want to keep those same executives around regardless of whether they're good at their jobs or not? Because Paramount has already shown, like under Skydance ownership, that they're willing to get rid of executives who were doing a good job prior to, you know, Paramount being owned by Skydance, but they just weren't the people that David Allison wanted around or that had the same vision that David Allison has. So he let them go. Like, and now he's got other people who are more loyal to him, who share his vision, you know? So certainly with Paramount, based on that as our precedents, I could imagine a future where Peter Safran and James Gunn may no longer be in charge of DC Studios. There may no longer be a DC Studios to begin with. And Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, even though they're really good at their jobs, they're some of the best, there's a possibility, Hunter Iggy, like you were asking, like they, despite the fact that they have those contract extensions, Paramount's got the money to pay them off. Like, be like, we'll pay off your contract and you get a nice golden parachute and then you're off on your own and we'll bring somebody else in. They could do that. Like, they could absolutely do that. So it does cast doubt a little bit. Again, this is speculation. This may not happen. David Zaslav might still be around because both Paramount and Netflix have said that Warner Brothers will not disappear. It will still be a studio that's is going to stick around. It's just going to be under our ownership. So David Zaslav could still be the CEO of whatever that entity is, or not. And if not, then, you know, it just opens up a lot of the people who he has hired to potentially being fired or replaced. So that is a real concern. It's still a remote possibility, but as this bidding war continues, both Paramount and Netflix may not like David Zaslav as much as they did before, because they're like, obviously you're doing what you believe is best for your, you know, personal benefit because you want a lot of the stock, but you're also, you know, taking a lot more money from us. So yeah, I don't know if he wanted you to be sticking around after the fact. And David Zaslav is as much of a deal maker as any out there. So he can easily, according to this Deadline article, they're like, you know, they asked media analysts and they were talking about how David Zaslav could just walk away, and with all of his, you know, windfall of his millions and billions of dollars, he could just start up his own thing. He could start up his own production company, have a production deal with a studio, or he could just retire, or he could just leave Hollywood altogether and go live out on the East Coast like he used to with Discovery. So he doesn't need to stick around. I mean, his loyalty, I mean, and then whatever happens with James Gunn, Peter Safran, Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca, and everybody else at Warner Brothers right now, that won't be his responsibility anymore. I don't know who's gonna be the CEO of Warner Brothers, Stacy. That's more of a question of how they organize Paramount under whatever Paramount or Warner, you know, or Netflix. Who they hire as a CEO would depend on, if, you know, again, which company ends up buying Warner Brothers. If it's Netflix, I really have no idea right now, like who would be the favorite. to take over if David Zaslav doesn't stick around with Paramount. They probably will have one of the people that already works at Paramount move over potentially, so that might be the case. But I'm not willing to commit to who. Netflix is more likely to keep the executives because they don't want to like do the brain drain thing. Paramount is more likely to replace them. If you were asking for my opinion and my opinion only, I'm not going off of any anybody giving a prediction. I'm just saying Paramount is more likely to replace the executives to get people who are more in line with their vision, with David Ellison's vision for the company, than Netflix is. Netflix is more likely to keep them around. But that might not also be true for everybody. It may be true for Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca and not for Peter Safran and James Gunn, or vice versa. And those are just the 4 people. There's a lot more executives at Warner Brothers that might be looking at their jobs no longer being there for them. So in either case, with Netflix or Paramount. James Gunn and Peter Safran, I think they just got a few months extension. It's not like Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca who got a multi-year extension. Netflix did say that. Yeah, they did say they're keeping Zaslav around, but that was before Paramount's hostile offer. And that was before the reports that, David Zaslav will entertain those offers. Because now you're looking at a whole different calculus. Like, you might end up in a situation where ultimately, Paramount and Netflix might be like, we paid a lot more money than we wanted to. I don't think we want to work with the guy who made us pay a lot more money than we wanted to in the beginning. That's kind of like what it might come down to. Or they might be looking at doing something different, because it's one thing if Netflix pays what they currently have agreed to pay. It's completely another if they pay an extra $20 billion, then they might change up where they want to save some money down the road. Like, instead of saving $3 billion in cost efficiencies, they might try to save more. So their philosophies might change. Again, this is speculation, so don't take this as gospel, by far from it. But I'm just saying it's more of a possibility now that there's a bidding war happening. And these people are human after all. Ted Sarandos might not want to work with David Zaslav as closely anymore after he's gone through a bidding war than before he does. And David Ellison might not feel like he wants to answer David Zaslav's calls or text messages after he stopped responding to his text messages and calls last week. So, Anurad asking, do you think Paramount has the edge or Netflix? As of right now, if you were asking me, I would say Paramount has the slight edge, because the value of their deal is higher by the slightest amount, and some of it depends on ultimately what the Discovery networks will end up, being valued at when they get spun off next year. So there is a little bit of uncertainty there, but if you look at it just simply dollar for dollar, the Paramount offer is slightly higher, and there's more certainty there because they're giving you all cash up front. So that's why I think Paramount has a certain edge, because again, it's Wall Street, money talks, so bullshit walks, and Paramount currently has a bigger offer on the table if you just go by the dollars. That could change though, because both companies might be bidding with a higher number in the not too distant future. Yeah, you know what, Netflix, if Netflix or Paramount lets James Gunn go, Kevin Feige will happily take James Gunn back, and I think James Gunn would happily go back to Marvel. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case. Yeah, James Gunn probably has better job security with Netflix, because like I said, it's more likely that Paramount makes changes. Because again, there'll be more of a political tinge to some of the changes. There'll be, just the work culture that the Ellisons have instilled in place might not jibe well with what James Gunn and Peter Safran do, or Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca. MTG also saying, I think Netflix has the leg up. Why? They have a deal in place. They have the money. They have a relationship with the president too. Although I will say the Ellisons have a much closer relationship. Even though the president has said that he's not quite sure about either of them these days, when push comes to shove, he's got a much closer relationship with the Ellisons. The Ellisons were a part of the TikTok deal. They just went through with the Skydance Paramount deal. They've done a lot of appeasement. They've done a lot more work than Ted Sarandos has done. But Ted Sarandos does have a relationship there. But yeah, I mean, look, if the president and his administration do get in the way, I mean, would they want to wait till 2029, MTG? That's the question. I don't think the shareholders want this to get held up until 2029. Then at that point, like, a lot of the value of the deal might go away, because like now you're in limbo for 4 years. So I don't think they don't want to let this sit around for that long. They're like saying, take our offer, we'll make this, and we're going to close this in 1 year's time, whereas Netflix might take 2 years potentially to do it. So that's again what Paramount is saying. Netflix is saying it will take a lot less time. Yeah, so this is the thing. I mean, look, Paramount doesn't value it as much, the cable networks, as Warner Brothers does. It's not that they don't value it. They just don't value it as much. If anything, my prediction here would be that Paramount, after buying Warner Brothers, if they do end up doing that, they're probably going to go buy Versant, the NBC Universal spinoff with all their networks. Because the way David Allison was talking about his effusive praise for like how well that company is set up to succeed, he might go and buy them instead. I mean, either or if he ultimately ends up failing to buy Warner Brothers, he might go buy the Discovery Networks next year, and then also buy Versant, because that will help them grow. Because for Paramount, this is all about having a bigger market share, because they don't think that they'll be able to get there simply by growing, or it will take a long time to do it. And for Netflix, if they don't end up with Warner Brothers, they're still Netflix. There's like, again, I'll go to this chart. They're still bigger in terms of overall value than pretty much every movie studio in Hollywood, as well as every movie theater chain, and pretty much in a Stars being like a streaming service on its own. All of those companies, including Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, Paramount, all of them and more combined are still not as valuable as Netflix. So Netflix doesn't really need this deal. They don't need it as much as Paramount does. Paramount, there's more of a sense of urgency to this. So yeah, if Paramount doesn't end up with what they want here with Warner Brothers, they might go and purchase Versant. They might go and purchase Discovery Networks. That's more likely to happen. Yeah. It's not just Zaslav though. It's likely the board and the shareholders will have final say. Well, the whole idea of the hostile takeover for Paramount is that the shareholders could force this to go in their direction, in the direction of Paramount. Because if there's a simple majority there for the shareholders saying we want Paramount, then the board will get replaced by Paramount-friendly board members. And then at that point, Paramount will be able to take over the company. So there is that part to it. But I mean, as of right now, if a status quo holds, then yes, Netflix has the advantage because they have a deal that's signed. So yeah. I mean, yes, the Jared Kushner, who's also, president's son-in-law, and the Saudis who are backing the deal, that's part of the equation for sure for Paramount. But they're saying the Ellisons are backing up all of that money. So if they're good for it, that's the Paramount argument. But at the same time, you have to say that, those are all reasons why they're saying, like, there's certainly the Jared Kushner thing. That's one more in favor of Paramount being able to get through this administration in terms of regulators, because he's the president's son-in-law. I mean, that's one inside track to all of this and a potential interest. But anyway, M2G saying, I don't think it's more valuable due to the networks than the stock. Take Netflix stock. That's a good point. Take the Netflix stock. It will probably go up in the future. Like, it's going down now, but over time, if Netflix does a good job of handling the new Warner Brothers assets, then it will go back up again. So if you look at that and think that that's a better way to go, then take that instead rather than the $30 now, because that what you get in Netflix stock might be worth a lot more in the future. So the Watcher saying Gunn is probably safe no matter what, and there's blood money in there. Them hills, yeah, dark, yeah, it's the Saudi money for sure. Depending on if, again, if you I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, the Saudis, yeah, their hands are not clean. But anyway, I don't buy that without the Ellisons. Enterprise. I don't know what you mean by that comment. The Watcher saying Zaslav was offered CEO by Paramount first, co-CEO that is. Also, Zaslav is friends with the Ellisons as well. He is. Yeah, he is. They took him out to dinners and all that stuff, but he stopped answering their messages. Like, he wasn't even answering text messages from David Ellison. So I'm saying that relationship was good, but was it still good? That's the question. And will it continue to be good ongoing? And ultimately somebody's going to win and somebody's going to have to walk away with nothing. So is David, Zaslav still going to be friends with those folks, right? That's the question. Yeah, Warner Brothers literally took the Netflix deal. I don't think they mind waiting. That's true. Maybe the wait time, they must have considered it, right? So that's also not. Again, I'm not arguing in favor of one or the other. I do think Netflix, has one advantage, which is that they have the signed deal. So simply, if things just stay the way they are, they'll ultimately, end up getting this. I think both deals will go through regulatory approvals and for the most part go through. Even if there is a Department of Justice lawsuit, ultimately they'll probably still make it through that. So I don't think either of them will have a regulatory issue. It's just a matter of how long both will take. That's a question mark. Paramount's offer is technically worth more than the here and the now. And it's just a matter of whether you're willing to take the risk and say Netflix is going to do better overall long term. So I don't mind taking their stock now, even if it's less valued now, it will grow over time. Whereas, if you just want the money and then walk away, then you take the Paramount deal. So I'm not picking sides. I'm just telling you what both companies have been saying so far. So if I don't have a favorite company. I think my favorite in all this is still Warner Brothers Discovery, and I wish they just stayed, on their own. I really do, because if you look at it, David Ellison highlighted in his letter, and as well as in the Paramount's SEC filing with their hostile offer on Monday, saying that this whole ordeal started with a couple of years ago. David Zaslav and the then executive, the CEO of, I think it was Bob Bakish of the old Paramount, before the Skydance deal, they met up in 2023. I think we talked about it on the show about potentially combining Paramount and Warner Brothers. And David Ellison was interested in Warner Brothers before he bought Skydance. He had made it pretty clear to some of his close confidants and business partners. So he always had the interest. But then when Warner Brothers Discovery and David Zaslav decided they were gonna split the company and get rid of the cable networks and get rid of a lot of their debt alongside it and give that to the cable networks as a way to free up a lot more money and for Warner Brothers, the studios and streaming company, to kind of go about their business and do it without having as much debt around, which is like a weight that they're dragging behind them. That's when David Ellison was like, and this is something is mentioned in his SEC filings for Paramount. That's when they were like, oh, we need to go after them now. Like, we can't wait, because if we wait, then we'll be needing to buy two companies. So we should buy them before they split themselves up. So in a way, when Paramount started sending those bids before the official bidding process started, they had sent 3 bids already. All of that in a way was initiated because David Zaslav and co decided they wanted to split the company in half. And have Discovery Global be its own thing again, and Warner Brothers, the new Warner Brothers, will be the studios and streaming side of things. And apparently, if they hadn't done that, I mean, sure, David Ellison might still have wanted it, but they might not have been going as aggressively at it. So the why all this is happening now is because Warner Brothers Discovery decided they wanted to split up into 2 companies. So I'm like, I wish Warner Brothers Discovery didn't do that. Maybe then none of this would have been happening today. So Will Ellison upped the bid to $32 a share. That's the speculation. It's not that big of a jump from $30. I would be willing to bet that he can go $32 or higher. He can easily do that, because according to some reporting that I've seen, the implied value of the Netflix package, if you add up the implied value of the Discovery Global networks, which Warner Brothers Discovery seems to think could be valued as much as $5 per share, if you add that phantom value to the value of the Netflix deal, which is $7.75 a share, that is already at $32 total. Part of it is kind of a phantom number. So, but if you look at it that way, then, by upping the Paramount deal to $32 a share, you would be matching it. So yeah, I mean, I think at the very least, Paramount will probably do that. They probably won't do it until they hear from Warner Brothers Discovery shareholder, the board next Friday, about their recommendation if they will stick with Netflix, which is the expected thing to do, or if they will change their mind and go with the Paramount offer. So the question is, at that point, what does Paramount do? Or do they, in the lead up to that, improve their offer and go up to try to convince Warner Brothers to change their mind about Netflix? That's kind of like where we're at right now. But yeah, I mean, look, I can see it enterprising. Ellison is more likely to shift the direction of DC. He might even go over James Gunn and Peter Safran's head to approve movies. They've already been doing that with Paramount. They canceled the TMNT movie, the Last Ronin, and now they've got another one going. And the executives who were in charge of the old one, The Last Ronin, were not happy about that. So I can easily see James Gunn even leaving of his own accord if that kind of thing happens under DC, with Paramount. So yeah, it's more likely than it would be with Netflix. I do hear that. I brought you Bunny, so you dinner, so you sell me Bugs Bunny. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's more about wooing your clients, I guess, or your future business partners. Live action Sylvester, I don't know, like a cat, that knows how to walk on 2 feet. A baby. Yeah. Well, a friendship I think will go a long way, but ultimately it's about money. This is all about money. Whichever company pays more and clearly, undisputedly more money is going to be the one that wins. That's really what ultimately it's going to come down to. Yeah, I don't think that any of them are waiting for 5 years to make this happen. How dare you pick sides, Dan? Warner Brothers is a side. What do you mean Warner Brothers is a side? I mean, I'm just saying I think it's better for the business as a whole if Warner Brothers stayed independent and not get consumed by one of the other companies. It's better for filmmakers. It's better for a competition. It's better for us fans because we'll ultimately get more movies and more diverse movies, and hopefully the prices of movies will stay down because there will be more movie studios putting out more movies out there, so there'll be more volume and more quality, hopefully. And that's why I'm picking the Warner Brothers to be independent in this, that neither of these deals happen. But that's the least likely outcome, so I guess I'm on the fence at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing: James Gunn doesn't want to put out 3 to 4 movies a year. Watcher, that's about quality, and that's his philosophy. He won't change that. It's not because he's not being given the money to do it. It's just they don't want to do it because they want to focus on quality. So they want to put out 2 of them a year, 2 live action movies. And I don't know if that's going to change under David Ellison, unless he starts to put pressure on them to do that. Yeah, I think a lot of us wish Warner Brothers stays independent enterprising. Take your poison. I'll take the Netflix poison and the Paramount poison. I mean, look, Chuck Rod, that's fair. Totally fair. Again, a lot of people land on different sides of the equation. I think Netflix ultimately has the benefit of, they'll keep a lot more of Warner Brothers intact because they don't have something equivalent. Paramount does, so there will be more. I think ultimately Paramount will end up letting more people go because they have a lot more people doing the same thing in both studios for Paramount and Warner Brothers, but they might not. I mean, they keep saying they're going to keep the 2 studios separate, so I don't know. Again, it depends on who you take at face value. Is Ted Sarandos serious about keeping Warner Brothers movies going to theaters, or is he not? The same thing. So there's caveats on both sides. I wish there was a clear, obvious, better option here, but unfortunately as of right now there isn't. But there might be, depending on how things change over the next few days and weeks. So yeah, if I have a question, the Supergirl movie prequel to James Gunn's Superman movie? No, Hunter, it's not. The events of Supergirl, as far as we are aware, take place after the events of Superman. Especially if you go off of what we saw Supergirl doing at the end of Superman, because she left Crypto behind, and then it looks like Crypto's going to be with her on this trip across the cosmos. So unless that changes with the teaser trailer dropping in the morning, I don't think that'll be the case. So it's not a prequel to Superman. Deus Asla would make more money just keeping Warner Brothers rather than selling. The Watcher, it would depend. It would depend because he's got a lot of stock options, and those stock options are not really worth anything until they're actually cashed and turned into money. They will pretty much, will turn into money once this deal goes through because, that's just how the things will go. But other than that, they'll just stay hypothetical. And so if Warner Brothers' value improves over time, if they stay independent, then David Zaslav could make more money. But yeah, I don't know. That's a big hypothetical. I'm not willing to say that they could go one way or the other just yet. MTG saying, I know you're not picking sides. I actually think both have pluses and minuses. Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. There's clearly good things and bad things about both options. But MTG feels that Netflix will win, and thinks that he doesn't like, or they don't like, the duplicity of the double studios with Paramount and Warner Brothers. Agreed. I think that ultimately, long term, it's more likely that Paramount and Warner Brothers become one big studio, or one studio backlot with multiple entities operating inside it, like Disney now has 20th Century Studios. So if you rather avoid the Disney 20th Century Studio situation, then you should be, favoring the Netflix deal, because Netflix doesn't have something equivalent of it, whereas Paramount does. So again, it depends on what you see as the lesser evil in some respects. Yeah, I mean, Paramount does know how to run a studio more so than Netflix. That's true, Watcher. So again, that's one point for Paramount. We could like do a pro and con list, and there's a lot, going in favor and against both sides. If Paramount knew how to run their company, Skydance wouldn't have a chance to buying them. Oh, Sigburn Enterprising. You know what? That's a good point. But then again, that's not the people that are in charge anymore. Sherry Redstone sold off her interest in the company, her majority stake, and so the current owners of Paramount are the Skydance folks. So yes, I mean, you're not wrong about that, but at the same time, those aren't the people making decisions anymore. Netflix could go also give Gunn's head and stick low quality DC stuff on Netflix, saying the Watcher. I could see Gunn leaving on his own if he butted head with Netflix or with theatrical. Yeah, absolutely. Gunn could leave under Netflix as well. That's the thing about change like this at the company level. People could leave. Like I've left jobs before when they made like the ownership change and new people were put in charge and and then just the management structure change, and I was like, I don't like the people I work with in this new structure. I like the people I worked with before. Some of them are still around, but I just don't work with them anymore. I don't like my new manager. I don't like the like the team. I don't like the new structure. I don't like the way the new company does business. I've had to do that. I'm sure some of you have had to do that too. So I'm sure James Gunn, if he was put in that position, he might make that same choice. Stacy saying, I think Warner Brothers needs to make a live action of each one of the Weeknd's characters and help create animated Dirty Harry movies. I think that's just jumping a step ahead. I think those would be good ideas, but that just all depends on, if Netflix ultimately ends up with everything here. Hey, May 8th, how are you today? Hello. We've been live for a little while already, so thank you for joining in. Hit the like button while you guys are watching. I'm going to take a few more of your questions before we finish up, but if you guys joined in late, you can hit rewind, and you'll be kind and rewind, because we have a whole chunk of the show where John was on. We're talking about DC, Supergirl, we're talking about the Hunger Games, we're talking about the 28 Years Later franchise, the box office, Zootopia 2 being back at the top of the box office this week, and Avatar coming next week. So a lot more to talk about. But of course, right now we're discussing the Warner Brothers Discovery sale talk. So Watcher saying Netflix will want more films on it as well. Really, in my opinion, Netflix and Paramount are both sides of the same coin. You know what? That's probably the best way to put it ultimately at the end of the day, because both companies will have different ideas, but could potentially be equally as bad for Warner Brothers as we know it today. There could also be good ideas that could, turn out really well for either side. But again, neither of these companies, ultimately, I think, for the sake of us as fans and for the sake of competition for filmmakers, for being valued and for having leverage in the market, ultimately, again, if Warner Brothers just stayed independent, that would be best for business. But that's not going to happen. So yeah, whether it's Netflix or Paramount, they're both sides on, two sides of the same coin, like you said, Watcher. Enterprising saying, I trust Netflix, who had Del Toro on their side over Paramount. Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Paramount too. Paramount just got a deal with the Duffer Brothers, and they took them from Netflix. So, and they just got a deal with James. I mean, I'm sure like we haven't seen them produce stuff for them yet, so we don't know how well those relationships will work out down the road. But still, I think again you can make cases for both sides. Like Netflix had a deal with Zack Snyder, Netflix has had a deal with Martin Scorsese. Like there's both companies have been working with in recent past and in the distant past with some incredibly talented folks who are still working in the industry. So I don't know if that's an accurate assessment of the what these companies will do with Warner Brothers, but it just goes to show you that both have the money to, and they're not afraid to splash it. And clearly, that's why they're in this bidding war. The next the Netflix Marvel stuff was high quality. True, it was definitely high quality. So, but again, it was still like under the Disney umbrella. Partly, Disney still owns those shows. So if you're implying that those same people, like the creatives, will work on potential DC properties, that won't be the case. Under the below the line talent, yes, those folks could be largely similar, like the people like the PAs and the people who are the gaffer, the electricians, like the camera department people, like those people might be similar because they work on movies and TV shows with all different kinds of studios and production companies. But as far as the creatives go, like the Disney creatives were working on the Disney side, they were working on Netflix's stuff because it was licensed from Disney, the Marvel stuff. But it's not the same thing, as they're not going to just have those people working on DC after the Netflix merger goes through, if it goes through. James. I mean, obviously, Guillermo del Toro with has recently praised James Gunn, so that makes sense that he might vouch for him. That because he's still got a relationship with Netflix. There isn't somebody of the same ilk at Paramount right now that can necessarily speak in favor of James Gunn. Not that James Gunn needs it. I don't think so. I don't think that would be an issue. The Super Duffer Bros. Disney Daredevil wasn't as good as the Netflix one, from what I heard. Oh, you know what? I don't know. I've heard that for the most part, people still prefer the Netflix version. But honestly, I mean, I don't know. I'm not somebody who's ever watched the show all the way through, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. But some people prefer it. But as far as I know, from what I can tell, a lot of people still prefer the Netflix version. But yeah, look, as far as this whole situation goes, I think I'm going to choose to leave it there for now, just to kind of highlight where we are at. The next big date when things might change and go in a different direction would be next Friday, when Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders, the board of Warner Brothers Discovery will make a recommendation to the shareholders about which offer they recommend going with. They could stick with Netflix, which is currently what's expected to happen, or they could go with the Paramount offer. Paramount could raise their offer leading up to that point next Friday to make it a little, sweeten it up a little bit. Netflix could do the same, or not. They could wait until the decision comes in and then make that choice and that next step. Either way, it's very much expected that whichever direction the Warner Brothers board goes next week, that we're ultimately going to get a bidding war, because Paramount will probably raise this deal, the value of their deal, their offer, and then if they raise their offer, then Netflix will raise it, or vice versa, and it might take a couple of rounds of raising their offers before one chooses to walk away. So, until that happens, I mean, we'll keep covering these updates. We'll be here tomorrow. We'll be live in literally less than 12 hours time. We'll be live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. This morning, John and I will watch and react to the Supergirl teaser trailer that will be releasing at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we'll talk about it. We'll break it down frame by frame. We'll see if we can make predictions about the box office for Supergirl based on just the teaser trailer. These are way too early predictions. And so be sure to stick around, come back and join us for DCU Daily for that. Thank you for sticking around. This is a really long show, especially this back half of it where I've just been talking about the Warner Brothers Discovery stuff. And I really appreciate your support. And do definitely hit the like button. I don't think everybody loves Raymond Comes Back, Stacey, simply because the folks who made the show don't want to come back and bring it back. And by the way, it's a Paramount thing, so it's not owned by Warner Brothers. So even if Netflix gets Warner Brothers, Everybody Loves Raymond would still be with Paramount. So under CBS, CBS Television Studios. But anyway, we'll be back in literally hours from now. If I had to give you a number, I think this ends up being about 9 hours. Yeah, 9 hours from now. Talking about more DC news. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna be talking about Supergirl. But I'm hyped. There's the teaser to the teaser trailers. The teasers to the teaser trailer have looked amazing. Of course, the Supergirl poster came out. So far, they haven't missed a step. I think they've done an amazing job of building up the hype. They had a Times Square billboard thing activation, and all of that is going to lead us to what looks to be an exciting Supergirl trailer. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Look up and look out, and of course, since I just was talking about Supergirl, we'll see you at 11:30 a.m. Eastern talking about the Supergirl teaser trailer, reacting to it live and breaking it down afterwards. Until then, what would James Gunn say? Weren't we blessed from the beginning? Well, we are blessed at the end. So make sure to hit that like button, hit the notification bell on your way out so that you know when we go live. And if you aren't subscribed, what are you doing? Hit subscribe, folks. Like we are here 5 days a week. And until the morning, everybody, hashtag blessed. Yeah. Chuck Rod might stay up throughout the night. All right, well, get your coffee ready because it's gonna be a long day of news. Look up and look out. And until this morning, make sure you get some rest. I'm gonna get some sleep. I need that sleep. My voice not been good. I wasn't feeling well today, but thank you for sticking around with me. I'll see you in the morning with John. Until then, have a great rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Another episode of DCU Daily.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see.
Right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing, I'm telling you really I'm doing sublime. I never wait in a stewardess line, I just go do it, I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it, how am I moving? I'm moving like you wanna shine. Follow my lead, don't listen to lies. I had to put me all in the line, that's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Hunka hunka!
Look up and look out. We'll see you in the morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time with the Supergirl trailer reaction. See you then.